Hello and welcome to the third biannual Stacey West Transfer Deadline Day special, presented by your four favourite Lincoln City sycophants, eager to protect our standing within the Lincoln City community. My name is Gary Hutchinson. I will be partly your host for this evening. I will be joined by my three Stacey West colleagues at various points throughout the evening. So what can you expect from our Deadline Day special? Well, we do have a plan for you, believe it or not. We are organised here at the Stacey West. So for the first 30 minutes, you're going to get me and Ben talking at you about the Wigan game. On the hour, every hour, Ben will chime in with the latest League One deals, keeping you abreast of everything that's going on in our division. Charlie Beeston will be joining me as we then look at the former imps on the move this transfer window. There's been some remarkable moves, some that may even still happen today. So we're going to be going through those. We've got Conor McGrandles on the show, a nice pre-recorded segment that Ben did this afternoon. I would love to have done it, but my bloody neighbour's renovating her house. So unfortunately, I couldn't record. So we'll have Conor McGrandles talking about deadline day deals from a player's perspective. Sort of what happens, how is it handled, how does it affect them, that sort of thing. We've got Jez George live on the show, hopefully around 9 o'clock, just going over the transfer window, having a look at the things that have happened, the movers, the shakers, and what the general climate is. Charlie Beeston's going to be back on then. He's looked at all of the loan deals that we made in the summer and in the winter window, how those players are getting on, and how the players that we've loaned out recently are likely to get on at their new clubs, Rob Street and JJ McKiernan. Mr. Lamming will be with us as well. He's going to be chiming in on our permanent deals, looking at how they affect the squad, the ins and the outs. We've picked, three of us, me, Charlie and Ben, have picked a League One deal that stands out as well. There's been some huge numbers. Huge amounts of money spent. So we're going to be looking at those. And hopefully, you never know, we might have some breaking news. That's the plan. Some of that stuff might not happen, whatever. So at this stage, let me introduce to you, first of all, one of my co-hosts for this evening. He's got hair like a Lego character, but he's put so much work in this afternoon. It's unbelievable. His name is Ben Ward. And if he's pressing the buttons right, he's going to appear here right about now.
Hello. I'm good, despite the fact, yes, I do have Lego man hair. It's partly due to my hobbies, but all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all. I'm just looking at everybody saying hello. I'm just going to say hello to some people because we're live, so we can do that. So Steve Jollins, Don Thorley, John Bates, Flossy Tops, Andy S, Mertha Imp, Malcolm's got his proper name on now, Jacob Langham, Steve Barton, Paulus, and Gaz Nicholson are all on board. That's a selection of people at the moment. 90 are watching us. It's been a pretty quiet deadline day. Well, I say deadline day special, pretty quiet deadline day, hasn't it, at the minute?
Yeah, I'm not. Well, I suppose from our point of view, that's probably a good thing, given, you know, the likelihood is that if there is transfer news coming out of Lincoln City at the minute, it's probably going to be somebody really good leaving. So, yeah, hopefully it stays nice and quiet on that front, because I think we're probably covered for most of the positions that we've got going on. And there he is.
My old man.
Your old man is on board. How are we doing, Pete?
Good to see him. Good to see him. And Josh Russell is saying hello because he's not blocked. Nobody's blocked from YouTube, John. Just Joshua, just a selection of people from Twitter. It's been a turbulent 24 hours on the Stacey West Twitter. But thank you to everybody who did take time to message me. Messages of support. It seems that the vocal minority, many of whom ended up blocked, apparently carried on afterwards, but I don't know what they said. So yeah, but it was a little bit like 8 Mile, wasn't it? It was just they kept coming on saying the same things, and I just kept batting them away. I felt like B Rabbit.
Yeah, the thing is, B Rabbit said it himself at the end of it, didn't he? His whole rap was about things that he'd done to himself. Yeah.
What was my introduction here? Sycophants protecting their standing within the club. B Rabbit. Yeah, well, B Rabbit. Anyway, those who haven't seen.
Well, I mean, I suppose to be fair, like you said that Jez is, Jez is hopefully going to be on a bit later on. It's not going to be too far for you to go, considering that he's probably in your kitchen. So it's all good.
Finishing off my bratwurst pasta that I had for dinner.
So Connor has asked, will this be a podcast YouTube video? I'm not going to lie. At the moment, we're looking at going live for about 4 hours, and then after that, it's going to be trimming down the audio to make a podcast and then potentially a video. The archive will stay up on YouTube. In terms of a podcast, maybe we're looking at half an hour to talk about the Wigan game, and then also the Conor McGrandles interview. So if I do get a chance before I go to bed tonight, I'll get that all clipped up and it'll all be fine. But yeah.
Very quickly, Richard Godson says, what's happened to the Stacey West Deadline Day studio? Honestly, my ring light overheats my Mac because my Mac doesn't have USB ports, so I've got like an extension on it. And so my ring light doesn't work for 4 hours. It'll work for about an hour and then drop off. If I don't have my ring light on, the green screen looks rubbish. So we've lost the Deadline Day studio, I am afraid. But we've got Poacher in the background. He's sat up to attention. Now, what I'm going to do here is we're going to swap positions, and we're going to let Ben now present 30 minutes of a normal podcast looking back at the Wigan game, which has been a real trigger point for the club. So over to him.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you say, it's been a bit of a trigger point. Obviously, going into the game, I think a few of us felt pretty confident, despite the result against Blackpool in the week. I thought we could potentially scrape a 1-0. I think there's probably a few people saying, "Oh, we might be settle for a draw." I would have taken a draw, but I would have loved to have gotten all 3 points. And yeah, going into it, I think the first 20 minutes. Well, let's talk about the lineup first off, because there was 3 changes, weren't there, from Tuesday night. James Collins coming in for his first start, which I think a lot of people were very happy about. And possibly a bigger surprise for some people was the fact that Zach George has kept his place in the starting goalkeeper spot. So thoughts on that one, Gaz?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think actually it was the right move by Michael Skubala, because George hasn't actually done anything wrong. He's commanded his area well. He's been a decent shot stopper. I don't think he was to blame for either of the Blackpool goals. So I think he's done well. He's made a couple of really good saves as well. There was a save late on against Peterborough from point blank range, which was excellent. I thought he had a decent game against Wigan as well. I think he made a good save that bounced up just in front of him later on from Smith, I think it was. So yeah, I think he's justified his selection. Now the big question is, does he keep his place over the next few weeks? Because he came out in the accounts, George Wickens was a 6-figure signing. You would imagine that may even have started, late 100,000s rather than 100,000. He's going to have been an in-demand player. We've gone for him because we've had success with Lucas Jensen. We'll talk about other goalkeepers who may move in this window, but you only need to look at the likes of Josh Griffiths and Carl Rushworth and Alex Palmer, who have gone on to play regular football at a high level after a loan with us. So what we're obviously looking for here is George Wickens to be the next on that line. So it's going to be really interesting whether we bring George Wickens back into the fold, and we've kind of allowed George a little bit of an overlap, or whether Zach genuinely keeps his place. And on the James Collins thing, I wanted James Collins to start the first game he played. He didn't, and we won 5-1, so I looked a fool. I wanted to start the second game, and then obviously Ben House came off injured. Collins came on. I thought he looked quite good. So yeah, look, he's been signed to start 90% of our games. He hasn't been signed to be an impact sub. He's been signed to play regularly. So I think now James Collins in the starting lineup is something that we will see on a much, much more regular basis.
Absolutely. So I mean, yeah, getting into the game then. I thought we were pretty decent for the first 20 minutes, to be honest, until there was that extended break. I thought we could have, maybe had 1, if not 2 goals fairly early doors. Obviously, Tom Bayliss rattled the crossbar with another excellent free kick. Obviously, not quite as excellent as his one the other week, but yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like there was any real danger, to be honest, until we went in for that. Until Jovan went in for that challenge, and I mean, let's be honest, it was a fairly obvious yellow card. I don't think there's any complaints from us on that one. I think it's unfortunate the lads had to go off injured, because it was innocuous, but it was a yellow card.
You're leaving me a lot to unpack here, Ben, aren't you?
Yeah. So I mean, what do you want me to say? So yeah,
let's talk about how we dominated the first 20 minutes. Let's not go straight on to the major talking points.
Okay, up up to the free kick where the lad got injured, I thought we were pretty good. And yeah, like you say, I think we were pretty dominant. Could have been easy 2-0 up.
Thank you.
Take it away, Gary.
No, I wanted to focus on it because actually for the first 2 or 3 minutes, I thought Wigan looked really good. Dale Taylor, who we were linked with a while ago, I think one of us picked, I think it might actually have been me, picked him as a potential signing for us. Do you remember you picked a guy from Mansfield who had already moved and actually now has had a really good career, and I think he's done really well at Mansfield. So it was you used a huge amount of hindsight on picking that. But I went for Dale Taylor. I liked Taylor. I liked Johnny Smith. I thought Wigan looked really good for the first 2 or 3 minutes, and then we just took control. And we played really well. And look, the people who moan about Lincoln City won't want to hear that, but we did, and we did create chances. Jovan actually missed a really good opportunity from Deriqua's cross. He should have got a head on it. I think Jimmy Walker in commentary said he had to score. I think that's a little bit hyperbole, but it was a really good effort. Again, Tom Bayliss, like you say, rattled the crossbar. We were just in control. We were pressing them high. Their kind of right-sided defence, so the right back and the right-sided centre-back couldn't handle us. Jamie Carragher's son is clearly not the same quality as his dad. We were picking up second balls. And I just, at that point, I just thought sooner or later we're going to score, and then we're going to score again, and then we might even score again. That's how confident I was in those first 20 minutes. And the stats back it up. I'm not going to go on about XG because we're live in front of a lot of people, and a lot of I don't want to bore too many people. But XG wise, we looked like we were creating more. Nothing too outright. No outright chances, but we were just in control. And then, as you say, yep. Look, Jovan's challenge. Jovan didn't have the best of games. I'm a Jovan fan, but what I do is I call what I see. And on Saturday, Jovan didn't have a good game. He struggled to get, I think, into the game. He struggled to get on the ball. He struggled to win the flick-ons. He was probably, the one player up top that you just thought, oh, come on, because I wanted him to link up well with James Collins. And then it is a mad challenge. Well, I say a mad challenge. He's made it. It's not one that you go, oh, it didn't need making. It wasn't nice. It did injure the lad. It was a booking, without a doubt. And then, of course, it just turned the game. I think it's because they kind of got fired up after that and they were putting their boot in, and it was just all a little bit more frenetic.
Yeah, I think when you see a striker get a yellow card like that, you can suddenly maybe give him a little bit more stick than you normally would do. And then they can't react. They can't retaliate. And it's not normally Jovan's game to get physical and do that. But I thought it maybe hampered him a little bit more than we would have maybe expected it to.
And then James Collins got one. James Collins got one that there was a really weak yellow card straight afterwards.
Oh, that was it's something I was going to come on to, because I know it's a cliched thing to do, but let's talk about the referee for a minute, because I don't think he had a particularly good game on either side. I was a little bit frustrated by seemingly everything, and obviously red and white tinted glasses, it seemed like everything was going against us when we were getting forward. You say about James Collins getting a yellow card for a foul that was barely a foul. There was one where I know we were chatting amongst ourselves, and Jovan got a really bad I think Jovan just got pulled down at one point and the referee didn't even give it. And most referees you'd probably expect would give that a yellow card. It seemed like we weren't going to get anything from the referee until a point a little bit later on in the game that we'll come on to.
I'm not going to criticise him as much, if I'm honest, because I think it was a difficult game to referee. He booked 5 of their players and 2 of ours. The Jovan booking he got right. The second Jovan incident, he got right. James Collins booking, yes, he got wrong. Yes, he got 1 or 2 free kicks that he let go. But I think Chris talks about situational bias. And I think that's what we as supporters get. So we see Jovan get booked. We then see Jovan get pulled over and you think that's a foul. And then you're looking. And sometimes we'll see something and say that's a foul, and other people will say it's not. I actually don't think he had a terrible game. He was consistent in commenting and pulling players to one side for pulling at corners. And I know we're going to come on to that, but he was consistent in that. And very rarely when the corner come in, did he then give a foul against us or against the attacking team, that's usually the referee's get out, isn't it? You're all pulling, the ball comes in, free kick. And he did that very, very rarely, and I respected him for that.
If you see a referee going to talk to players about pulling in the box before a corner, you can almost guarantee that it's a defensive free kick the other way around. The one thing that, I mean, let's come on to the goal, because I think it was a decision where we all we looked at it and we went, why has he done that?
Okay, so now I am going to criticise the ref.
There you go. You see, that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing it. The ball comes in. Ethan Hamilton's got the ball. He is fouled, but he stays on his feet and then loses the ball. The referee's played advantage because he stayed on his feet, and then within 10 seconds, no, within 10 seconds.
For me, the foul, there's two fouls. He's pulled him over, but then he's fouled on the edge of the area as well. And the referee waves advantage because the ball goes out to Tendai, not because he stayed on his feet.
I stayed on his feet in the initial instance, but
but you don't play advantage for that.
You might do. But anyway, it was within 10 seconds, the ball's up the other end of the pitch, and we're finding ourselves 1-0 down. Now, I know playing advantage is it's a subjective thing, isn't it? And Andy Brown's made the point here. It's too big a game for such an inexperienced ref. It was his first game in League One. It was only his third EFL game, in charge. When you play advantage, it is subjective. It isn't, an exact science. But I felt quite aggrieved at that with the with that advantage.
The reason I felt aggrieved with the advantage is because he waves play on, the ball goes to Tendai, and Tendai's lost it within a second. So for me, there's no clear advantage that's developed. So at that point, it is still a free kick. I wonder, had Tendai not lost the ball and not shot, and instead tried to carry the ball forward and be tackled, would he have given us with free kick? I don't know. The other thing I will say is, whilst I am aggrieved by that, 100%, there was still a passage of play whereby we've messed up because Pordy's given the ball away in the middle of the park. Adam Jackson's tackle's not quite enough. Sean Rowan can't get in front of the ball. So there is a passage of play after it. Yes, the goal annoys me, but Wigan fans have more right to be annoyed about the goal they conceded than we do about ours. But yeah, advantage is subjective, and I don't think I think the referee got it right every other time. There was a number of advantages he played where he went back and he booked players and that sort of thing. Just on that one occasion, I think he's made a split-second decision that's wrong.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But then after that, I think the first half kind of petered out for us a little bit. I don't think there was too much, intent from us until the halftime whistle. Then, coming out for the second half, obviously Ethan Arahan subbed off. Conor McGrandles comes on. And obviously it didn't have the same impact that it did against Bolton because we still had 11 men on the field. But you do feel it when Ethan Arahan's not on the pitch, don't you? I don't think we were anywhere near as good in the second half. And I would probably border on saying that the majority of it, I thought we were a bit poor.
I've got to agree with that. I thought the game got a little bit frenetic. I thought we looked a little bit tired. There was less of our passing game evident, which I think probably is a direct result of somebody like Arahan coming off. It was a massive pivot for us in the middle of the park. I thought Wigan were energised as well. Look, they've got good players. They're not doing particularly well in the league, but they have got good players that can hurt you. And they were getting on the ball well. I've always liked Johnny Smith. I like Jensen Weir in the middle of the park. They're two good players at this level. Dale Taylor, I thought, was a threat as well. And it wasn't great. It genuinely wasn't. We didn't create enough going forward. I thought we looked disjointed. I thought if we were going to do anything, it was coming through James Collins, who was one of the few players who I looked at and thought, actually, you've had a decent game. But Wigan had their chances. They put one wide of the left post, one wide of the right post. There was the save from G-Cock as well, which was a really good save. They didn't lay siege to our goal. And as I said, if we were to look at XG stats, theirs throughout the game was 0.97. So they probably scored the goal that their chances deserved. Without the late incident, ours would have been something like 0.27. So we didn't deserve to win the game. Honesty shout, Wigan deserved to win the game. It's just how it is. They did deserve to win the game. And I think in the second half that showed. I really do think we're a team that benefits from having a whole week off on the training field. And the fact we'd played Blackpool and then obviously we would have had the Wednesday off. You've then just got 2 days to prepare. I think we looked like we'd got a few tired legs as well, if I'm honest. So yeah, it wasn't great. So I can't believe we're saying that because we're risking our position within the club, aren't we, according to Twitter? But
Stop it, Gary. Stop it. You're winding people up, and it's not worth it.
Such a baby. Big baby.
But anyway, look, the second half goes on. There's a couple of instances where Adam Jackson feels that he's fouled, probably justifiably, and he pulls across the referee and he has a chat with him. Now, the footage made it look like it was quite a heated discussion between Adam Jackson and the referee, and Adam Jackson was quite a bit taller than that referee as well. So it made an amusing watch. But you have to think, as that stuck in his mind as the game gets to the end. And then, sure enough, the referee has a word with some players. They don't listen. The corner comes across, and Adam Jackson is hauled to the ground, and we get a penalty. Pretty much out of nowhere. But yeah, it felt like one of those moments where it happens all the time. You never see them given, but when they are given, if they're for you, you feel elated. I was delighted that we got it. I don't necessarily think it was deserved.
It's a penalty.
But yeah. Oh yeah, it was a penalty. But in terms of the flow of the game, I didn't necessarily think we deserved to get much out of the game, as you've suggested. But yeah, I was obviously pleased when we got given the penalty. So I mean, your thoughts on stuff like that, guys? Because as I say, it happens a lot, but it's very rarely given.
It's stupid by Carragher, because if you're pushing and pulling in the box and you're doing it and you're slightly obstructed by a player, or you're in a melee of players, you're on the goal line, the ref can't always see. Like, it's easy for us looking from a camera because you can look at, he's pulled over at the far post, but the referee's got 4 6'2" footballers in front of him. You can't see. Carragher has done it, penalty spot, where the referee is looking straight at it. There is nothing. It's just him looking at that. And he's pulled Jacko over. So it's stupid. I also think it's really clever by Adam Jackson, because on second watch, I thought he's used his frame, his size, and his momentum to almost go down. There's one angle I've seen where it almost looks like Jacko's going down and pulling the player with him, and it looks like he's bundled over. But it isn't. It is a penalty. But if Adam Jackson and the Carragher go toe to toe in the street, I don't think Carragher pulls him over quite as easily as that. No. Brutally honest, I don't. But you could say that about any tackle, any foul, any bit of pulling at all across the board. So yeah, it's a penalty. I think it's naive from their defender. I understand why their fans were incensed, that they were wrong. But we would be, we'd be, well, they pull all the time. Why'd you give a penalty for that? I get it. I understand it. And then you just think, well, who's going to take it? Of course, we've got a striker who wants to take penalties now, which, by the way, I like. I want my strikers taking penalties. Do you know what I mean? Like a couple of seasons ago, I want Ben House to be picking that ball up. He's got 15 goals. I want him to score 20. I don't want to see Danny Mandroya or Ted Bishop or Max Sanders getting the penalty. I want it to be James Collins or Matt Reed or John Akindi. A striker should be hungry. And for me, it kind of almost typifies, and Fred Drake obviously took one against Peterborough. For me, that typifies a hungry striker. Your striker doesn't want to hide. I want him to put the ball down. I want him to take responsibility. And he fucking missed it. Excuse my language.
I was about to say, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's a decent enough save. It's maybe not the best penalty in the world, but it's a decent enough save.
Good keeper,
the ball comes out, and Collins is quickest to react. And with absolutely no controversy whatsoever, he puts the ball in the back of the net, and everybody's happy, and we're all good. That's
done and dusted. Let's go home.
We've got to talk about it. I mean, obviously,
he's offside,
Rico was offside,
and he's interfering with play.
Yeah, the argument is he going to get to that ball if Rico's not in the way? I think it's tight, but it's a decision that you need to make. And if, as we've said before, if you give a referee a decision to make, a lot of the time they're going to make it. So, yeah,
penalty is the right decision.
Yep.
The offside is the wrong decision. But Wigan last season at our place. The
Was that the
Lino
one with
guest.
I was going to say
The
that was the one
Lino
with the guest.
guest.
Yeah.
Enrico Hackett scored the goal and it was disallowed, which, by the way, would have put us in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst it was not quite as important a game, what goes around comes around. But they've been done. They have been done by the Lino, because for me, Jason Kerr may have got the ball, and as Merthyr and Malcolm quite rightly says, VAR would have ruled the goal out. Absolutely, 100% without a doubt. VAR ruled that goal out.
Yep. So there we go. That was pretty much the last moment of the game. I don't think we really had anything after that, but coming away from Wigan with a 1-1 draw, I was a lot happier than I thought I was going to be. About 80 minutes in, coming out away from that game. So
as soon as that penalty goes in, if I was Michael Skabala, I'd be getting them to start the team bus. Let's go before they change their mind. You know what I mean? Garpering like a cartoon at the end, like that, with a bag with a point in it.
Yeah, with a background that's just looping.
But in all seriousness, that is what happens. Look, we've kept playing, we've kept putting the ball in the box. Now, we weren't great. I get that. We weren't. The first 20 minutes we were good. We played worse in the final 70 minutes of that game than we did throughout the Blackpool game. But we've come away with something. I actually thought we were worse than we were against Stevenage when we drew 0-0 as well. We looked a little bit lethargic. So it's good to have a full week now before Cambridge. And I genuinely think we go into the Cambridge, and I know we'll do a preview pod, but I genuinely think we go into the Cambridge game with some confidence and with something to prove. I can see us winning that 2 or 3-0.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. But obviously, one thing that we'll be thinking about is the lineup. Who's going to start? Is Conor McGrandle's going to start next weekend? So it's a question that we need to ask. But I had a chance to talk to Conor a bit earlier. That's a really bad segue. I'm sorry.
That's awful. It is awful. Do you want me to do the segue instead?
No, because you've had time to think about it.
I don't need to. It's like that. It's natural.
Yeah. So obviously, this time last year, Conor McGrandle signed for the Imps on deadline day. We had him on the show, and it was a bit of deja vu. So I got to speak to Conor a bit earlier on, and I asked him what it's like to be a player in a position where you're potentially moving on deadline day. Here we go. Hey guys, so yeah, I am here with Conor McGrandles, obviously signed for the Imps again last deadline day. So Conor, welcome back to the Stacey West. It must feel like deja vu. It's deadline day and you're back on with us.
Hi, thank you very much. Obviously, different circumstances this time, so good to be on.
Yeah, no, it's we wanted to get the insight from a player's perspective on deadline day. So obviously, you were kind of one of the obvious choices given the circumstances last year. So, as someone that moved to the club or moved on deadline day in general last year, how stressful is it for you moving at such short notice?
Yeah, it is really stressful. I think, luckily for me, it wasn't like a proper last second thing where you have to shoot up at like 6 o'clock or that. I had to kind of, a few days previous, I kind of like knew it was maybe happening, so like to manage to go in on deadline day morning into Charlton and then get it sorted, and then drove up, and I think I was in Lincoln by about 2-3 o'clock ish, and then that gave us enough time not to like proper be rushed, but it can be, especially if you get told late on that you're not wanted or that, and you're just scrambling to find anything, but luckily that wasn't the case for me last year.
Okay. So do you usually have, I mean, obviously you say there was a slightly different circumstance last year. Do players have an inkling that someone might be coming in for you if you're, potentially going to be moving on deadline day?
Yeah, obviously your agent in the club will be telling you this is interest or interest here and there. So you're kind of, if you've been told that maybe you're not wanted anymore, then you kind of half expect it. You just sometimes don't have a clue what it's going to be or where it's going to be. It could be the other end of the country or something like that. So you kind of have an idea, but still in the back of your head, you never know if it's actually going to come off. So it's dead stressful.
Okay. And how do you prep for that? I mean, obviously, like you say, if you're potentially going from one end of the country to the other, you're going to have things like your medicals. You know, do you kind of get closer to somewhere that you think you might be going, or do you kind of, you know, base yourself in the middle of the country so you've got a pretty even shot of getting to somewhere?
I think last year I just went into the training ground in the morning and tried to get it done. This is Charlton's training ground, so obviously I was in London and I was having to get up to Lincoln, so I tried to make sure that it got done as quick as possible. I had just like a bag packed just in case, like ready to go, and then because my girlfriend was staying with me at the time, so we had a flat there in London, so I was able to just go to there, and then the next day off we had Lincoln. That's when I came back and got all my stuff and sorted it for there. So like I just like tried to get it done as soon as possible, if that makes sense, because as you say, like you don't know where you're going, so you just have to kind of be prepared.
Yeah, I've just got this picture in my head of a service station somewhere in the Midlands, just with loads of footballers going like, well, I don't know where I'm going yet, but yeah, we'll figure something out. You say there that you know that you wanted to get it done quickly. Obviously, there is the element of, you know, you will want to go somewhere, but if there's a situation, for example, if you know if there's 2 or 3 clubs that are coming in for you, is there any pressure from your current club to sort of push you in one direction, or is it, you know, how much input does each party have on that?
Yeah, sometimes that can be the case. I think if say there's a club that's maybe competing directly or close enough-ish to you, like say a team wants to stay in division and it's close like that, they might not want you to go there. They might want you to go to a team in a different division or something like that. But usually you have the choice. If there's 2 or 3 clubs, you can hopefully pick which one you think suits best. But that's not always the case. And then sometimes you can, you know, feel a wee bit pressured into making a decision that you might not make if everything was on the same playing field.
Okay. And does that, well, I mean, obviously it must do, but how does that uncertainty affect those around you? So, you know, friends, family, both before and after the move on deadline day, particularly if it involves a big physical move?
Yeah, it's difficult. It is really difficult because usually, say it's if you've got your partner or whatever, they'll have jobs in the area probably or something like that. So they kind of need to, you know, uproot their lives as well. If you need to actually like move house or move apartment or whatever, so it is a big stressful thing on everyone. That's sometimes you need to not just think of yourself when you're making the decisions, because it can be really stressful as well for other people that involves like in your life. And I think that's kind of something that doesn't get spoke about or seen. The stuff that you need to like make, things that you need to make in the background, and obviously the sacrifices that, you know, your loved ones and your family members make for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, is there any, I suppose there must be, but is there a major difference to those stress levels between a transfer that happens, I don't know, 3rd or 4th of January and one that happens on the deadline day? Is there, you know, how different is that from a player's perspective? Obviously, from a fan's perspective, a lot of people love it because, oh, brilliant, deadline day signing. But from, you know, from where you are, is there any difference in that in those 2 circumstances?
Yeah, there can be. I know a lot of players who have went in the deadline day not having a clue what's happening, and then just something comes up out of the blue, maybe at like 5 o'clock, that you'd never heard of previously in the full month. So like sometimes if it's early on in the window, it's kind of been bubbling away for a wee bit, and you don't need to like force it as quickly, if you know what I mean. But if it just comes up, maybe as I said, like 3-4 o'clock on deadline day, you know, you need to proper rush. Like you don't see it coming, and then it's just like carnage for there.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's carnage. I can't imagine like just the amount of stuff that goes on, you know, in the club. Obviously, we've spoken to a few people around the club's operations on deadline day, and then, you know, I imagine from a player's perspective, if there's, like, say, if there's that inkling, or if you've got something that's been bubbling away, then you've got a little bit of time to prep for it. But if something hits at, like you say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, suddenly, if you're, you know, like previously, if you were at Charlton and suddenly you've got to go to Lincoln or even further up north, you're going to be going, yeah, okay, right, we need to get a wriggle on. So yeah, I can only imagine that's a pretty stressful one. Given that now you're pretty settled in the squad, does uncertainty around other players ever sort of come into you or the rest of the players? And is there a collective sigh of relief when the window closes, or do you just kind of say, right, that's it, let's get on with it?
I wouldn't say there's uncertainty, because I think you always hear rumours of people coming in, people going, and that's just, I think, part and parcel of it, because you never know if stuff's going to materialise. So I think, but at the end, obviously, if it's one of, say, your better players who are getting linked away and they stay, you're obviously like, oh yeah, buzzing that they've not left because they're one of the main players in the team. But I think, me personally, I never get unsettled about whether if someone's going to leave or not, because you just never know, and then something again can just happen last minute that you've not heard of or not expected about another player.
Okay, and I'm guessing, having spoken to you a couple of times before, I'm guessing there's plenty of banter and ribbon that goes around when those rumours start flying.
Yeah, it's mad. It's just a mad time of the season, because then sometimes things come up and you go and you ask the players, "Oh, is this true?" And then they could just turn around and say, "Nah, I don't know where that came from." So again, sometimes you don't even know if they're all legit or not.
Fair enough. And then one question that I think probably is one that some fans would be interested to know: when you make a deadline day move, and this isn't necessarily referring to yourself, but just in general, do you think it's more likely that someone could regret the move? I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Do you think it might be more likely for somebody to regret that move when it is made on deadline day due to the pressure of making a quick decision?
Yeah, it can be 100%. As I said, sometimes you feel like if you get told, right, you go, then you know you're not going to play at the club that you're at. So sometimes you just choose anything just to get away from that club, so you can maybe get game time. Whereas if you had a clear head and you had, loads of different things that you could do, you probably wouldn't make that decision. But sometimes you just feel forced or pressured. Right, I need to get out of here. I need to try and find somewhere else, and it could be the completely wrong thing that you wouldn't make if it was just a normal, clear decision making process.
Yeah, okay. And I'm guessing sometimes if a bid comes in, or if something does happen late on in the day, if you're, I don't know, maybe if you're relatively settled in the club that you're at, and then a bigger club comes in for you, have you seen that happen with other players, and suddenly there's a big decision to make?
Yeah, that's the same again. Sometimes you might go to a club, a bigger club in the same league, or a club in the higher division that maybe wouldn't suit your style as much, but you maybe just see the name and the division or whatever and think, oh yeah, brilliant. But it doesn't necessarily suit like what you're good at or what makes you good. So I think there's loads of different factors which kind of contribute to that, and I think you could always. It's so hard to keep a clear head in those situations and make the right decision. It's so easy to get it wrong.
Great stuff. Well, look, Connor, thank you for joining us, mate. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, it is a very different set of circumstances to when you spoke to us last season. We'll disappear and we'll let you put your feet up.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Well, that was actually incredibly insightful stuff from Conor McGrandle. So 1 year ago today, we had him live on the show as he joined Lincoln City, and there he's given us a little bit of an indication as to what it's like for a player. I think sometimes you probably don't quite realise the impact that it can have on players. They are human, believe it or not. So maybe some people should think about that next time they put their fingers on the keyboard. Now, Conor was once a former imp. And obviously last year he was a former imp on the move, even though he was coming back to us. This year there have been quite a few former imps on the move. And for the next 21 minutes, it was meant to be 30 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be talking about former imps on the move. And I'm going to be joined by the third member of the Stacey West team. He hasn't been introduced yet. He's the man with the biggest forehead in the world, Charlie Beeston. live and direct from Gibraltar. How are you doing, my friend?
I actually never thought I'd say this, but I think I'd prefer to have the Lego hair that Ben was described with. I think that might have been better than a big forehead.
Just any hair. Just any hair would be good, wouldn't it?
Hey, it's not growing.
I'm at the front. Anyway, Bobby Charlton. So we're going to be now discussing form rooms. It's been quite a big transfer window for former Lincoln players. We've got it's not quite a comprehensive list, but we've got a list of the main moves down below. Luke Plange, Crystal Palace to Motherwell. Oh, if only Motherwell fans knew. But there's a few that have also been muted. There's a big one today I really want to talk about first of all. Now, Alex Palmer, West Brom goalkeeper. Remember when he was here, he went back to West Brom. There was talk that he wouldn't play. We might be able to buy him. Well, we won't be able to buy him because he went on to play regularly for West Brom. He's kept 11 clean sheets in 30 games, I believe, this season. If it goes through, Alex Palmer will be moving to Premier League Ipswich Town for a fee that has been suggested to be around £5 million. Now, I watched the Southampton Ipswich highlights. I don't watch Premier League very often. And for some reason, I watched the highlights of this game and it's worked out quite well. It must be fate. And the Ipswich goalkeeper was, for want of a better word, absolute pony. He was definitely at fault for the first goal and there was a huge potential he was at fault for the second goal. So they could now be finishing their Premier League season with Alex Palmer as their number one. If this goes through, I mean, it's a huge move for Alex, a lovely lad. I liked him when he was here. He was great to interview, but a really, really good goalkeeper as well. What were your thoughts, Charlie, when you first saw this?
This was probably one of the least surprising moves I've seen all window. I'm the same as you. I don't really watch much Premier League football, but I keep kind of abreast of it as much as possible. More just social aspect, isn't it? And Ipswich have had real difficulties with their keepers this season, especially Muric, who was in goal for that Southampton game that you were talking about. I think he is worst or second worst in terms of errors leading to goal, which for the record isn't really a stat I like, but you know, it's a stat that does show just how bad he is by that metric. And they were clearly going to need somebody. And Alex Palmer last season was statistically the best goalkeeper in the Championship. Season before he was up there. This season he's up there again. Like, it just seems like it's the perfect pickup for Ipswich. And again, I think it's a really, really good move for Alex Palmer. I'm surprised it's taken him this long to get to the Premier League, if I'm honest, considering how he has been playing over the last few seasons in the second tier. But again, he's that good. I think he's perfectly earned his opportunity. Now, it's interesting as well, because if I'm not mistaken, in the summer, Ipswich were trying to sign Carl Rushworth, or they were linked with signing Carl Rushworth for a very similar fee. And I think if they've spent £5 million on Alex Palmer and they were also thinking about spending £5 million on Carl Rushworth, definitely think they've got the better deal in the January window rather than the summer one, which isn't something we normally talk about.
No, you see, that's interesting because Carl Rushworth has actually been on the move technically this window. He won't be listed down below because I think he's been recalled, hasn't he, from Hull City to Brighton. I might be wrong. I'm not sure which of these two was the best, if I'm honest. I liked both of them equally. I'd probably go on the side of Palmer. I think Palmer would be, I mean, we'd never get him, but he would fit the profile of what we want now, a little bit of a bigger goalkeeper, whereas Rushworth was a little bit smaller. But both of them are good stoppers, and I think both of them will play regular Premier League football. And by that, if it's just 6 months, Palmer, and then Ipswich go down, it's 6 months, but that's regular football, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And look, even if they do go down, they're going to be in a prime position to be fighting up near the top end of the Championship again. You know, probably them versus Birmingham for the title next season. And at the end of the day, Alex Palmer would be perfect for them in the Championship.
How interesting. We actually have, Ben, I'd take that down and correct it. We actually have some breaking news. It's not Lincoln City news, but it is former Imps on the move news. Now, Anthony Scully, who was a player I was actually going to try and get on to do the Conor McGrandle segment because he's made more deadline day moves than Jez George has brokered because he moved to us on deadline day. He left us on deadline day for Wigan. He joined Portsmouth on deadline day. He's now gone back to Colchester. Now, he was at Colchester earlier in the season, picked up an injury. No, I quite like Anthony Scully. I like him a lot. I messaged him a few weeks ago to ask how his injury was. I think he was going to have an operation or he was going to have some sort of treatment, and he was hoping that would solve his injury problems. So Scully gone back to Colchester. I'm going to drop this on you out of the blue, Charlie, but I mean, if he could get back to anywhere near the ability that he had for us, he's going to surely smash League Two.
Well, we looked at the signings that Colchester were making in the summer, and it looked like they were building, okay, yes, the Lincoln B team that it was being built on from builders from our end, but it genuinely looked like they were building a team that could destroy League Two. You think about the likes of Jack Payne in there and then Scully as well, obviously Ted Bishop at the same time as well. It just looked like it was a perfect blend of creative flair. And I think if Scully can get back to that same level, and of course it's an if for any player that does have that same kind of injury record over the last season or two as well, and dropping back into League Two. But if he can do it, 100% he could find himself back in League One sooner rather than later, because he's definitely got that raw technical ability. He showed that plenty when he was with us.
Now, one of the former imps on the move that I've actually missed out of my list, so definitely my bad, is Tom Hopper. So he had left Colchester. Now, they're actually, did you know, they've crept up to 13th in the division now. They're unbeaten in their last 4. I think they've only lost 2 league games since November. Absolutely flying. It'll surprise everybody to find out that Ted Bishop is now back and playing regular football for them as well. So really interested. But Tom Hopper actually went back to Southend United. So looking over those transfers, anything else that jumps out at you, Charlie?
In terms of the former imps, there's definitely a couple big ones. I think the big one, first of all, that was in League One, I think we definitely need to be talking about, is Joe Taylor. Of course, there was plenty of murmurings back in the summer and at the start of the window around whether we had any kind of an interest in bringing Joe Taylor back to the club. Didn't happen, and he's gone to Huddersfield for a reported £3 million. Of course, it's an undisclosed fee, as they always are at this level, but a reported £3 million. I think that one, again, is probably the one that affects us in League One the most. Not that I'm saying that we're going to be fighting Huddersfield as direct rivals necessarily this season, but he could quite easily bag a couple of goals that could, stick a nail in the coffin of our certain league position a little bit later on in the season, little things like that. So definitely an interesting one there. I think the big question on this is about the money side of it. £3 million for a striker in League One. Like a few years back, that would seem absolutely ludicrous, wouldn't it? But this season, it's really not that surprising. I remember I had a chat with friend of the podcast, Roy Thompson, last year. We were talking about the sort of the wages and the overall spend to bring in a striker like that. And like we were saying, at the end of the day, Joe Taylor showed with us that he was worth paying the big bucks for at this level, because he knows where the back of the net is on a regular, consistent basis. Obviously, Huddersfield have gone out and done that. And the question then was, is he going to be ready after effectively 6 months on the sideline, 6 months on the bench at Luton to get straight back firing? And now he's picked up an injury that's going to leave him out for 6 weeks. So maybe the answer there was no, not quite fully ready. But I definitely think once he comes back, we'll see him performing quite strongly in that Huddersfield side.
Excellent stuff. So if it's all right with you, shall we bring another member of the Stacey West crew in, Charlie, and give you a little bit of a break? So that was Charlie Beeston. He's over in Gibraltar. He's now going to disappear as if by magic. And in his place is the Sunday League Pep, but he gave that up to concentrate on his EFL punditry. He joined us late today because he was working hard in what is a real job, but he joins us now live and direct from Rugby. It's Chris Lamming. My God, your tie. Is that some sort of novelty wedding tie?
You bought it for me when we did this a year or two ago, to be honest. So thanks for that. I'm very well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I don't care. Yeah, good. I'm pleased you're well. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, mate. I'm really good indeed. So just a real quick one. I haven't prepped you for this at all, but Dane Oliver, Bradford to Shrewsbury, former Lincoln player. Has there ever been a more Gareth Ainsworth striker than Dane Oliver?
Short answer is no. No, there has not. It suits him perfectly. And I think it's a great advocate, isn't it? For you sign players that fit your system, don't you? So you mentioned this a few weeks ago, in that not necessarily the case that players have a level. They have a system that fits their profile. So Dane Oliver in most teams in League One probably wouldn't really have the, I suppose, technical ability or quality that most managers would be searching for. But is he someone who's going to allow you to get up the pitch, win headers, and be a bloody nuisance for defenders? 100%. And he just perfectly suits how Gareth Ainsworth wants to play. So yeah, I think it fits perfectly. It makes total sense. Total sense.
To put you on the spot, I'll buy you a pint in the Ivy Club next time we're there if you can tell me exactly how many clubs he's played for in 2 seconds.
11.
Oh, unlucky. 12. You owe me a pint.
Oh.
Right. looking down the rest of these moves. I mean, there's been some absolutely huge moves. And just for those of you who are watching at home at the moment, there are no rumours of a Lincoln City move this transfer window, but we don't know. There are still 2 hours and 40 minutes until the window closes. But before the window closed, Middlesbrough snuck in and paid a big fee to take Morgan Whittaker from Plymouth to they don't play at Ayresome Park, do they? They play at the Riverside now. Morgan Whittaker, who was a deadline day signing for us, 3-4 years ago now. People say was a flop. Actually, he played right wing back, scored, I think, 5 goals for us. I actually really liked him. There was talk of us being able to sign him at the end of the year. We didn't. He went on loan to Plymouth Argyle, joined them permanently. He's now earned them £5 million. Lazio were rumoured to be interested in him in the summer. What are your thoughts on this move, Mr. Lamming?
I think it's incredibly interesting. I fully expected someone to pay a big fee for Morgan Whittaker at some point, whether it be this window, maybe in the summer just gone, or the upcoming summer, because he's been nothing short of superb ever since he moved to Plymouth. I thought he was a really, really good signing for us. I thought he had really good technical ability, was probably a little bit wasted at wing back, it must be said. But he only played a handful of games there. I think he was a good player for us. I think we really saw some potential there. But of course, he only really hit his stride when he absolutely shone in a promotion-winning team at Plymouth Argyle. Scored, I think, 9 goals, 7 assists in half a season at Plymouth, which is just incredible. And then kept it going in the Championship. So there's often a question mark, isn't there, over players, can they make a step up? And he did in two full seasons in the Championship. 23 goals, 9 assists, so 32 goal involvements in 2 seasons from a player that doesn't even play up top, I think is pretty incredible. Has been a little bit quiet this season, but that's, I imagine, partly down to Plymouth Argyle's just struggles this season in the Championship. And off the back of, you mentioned a £5 million fee, I think it's reported £7 million, isn't it? He's gone to Middlesbrough. So Middlesbrough recently just sold Isaiah Jones, a very kind of touchline hugging right-sided player. Sold him to Luton for £6 million and have basically just reinvested that money on Morgan Whittaker, who's got a slightly different profile, who's probably going to offer a different profile in terms of cutting in off the right. We all know that his shooting from range is outstanding. So I think he'll be a real big player for Middlesbrough. I think how Middlesbrough play really suits him. I, for one, am just really pleased to see him doing well. I have to say, I thought he's a potential player for us. I thought he performed relatively well and could see he had potential. And it's just nice to see players going on and kind of showcasing that potential.
Yeah, it was 5 million up front, 2.5 million pounds in add-ons. So could rise to 7.5 million. Richard Godson says Dane Oliver technically hasn't played yet for Shrewsbury, so you're right. Well, he didn't play for Sheffield Wednesday either, and that was his first club. So technically, you're still wrong and still owe me a pint. A couple of other big moves. One that I really want to pick up on is Lewis Fiorini. Now, the reason I want to pick up on Lewis is I really liked him when he was here. There was a bit of a question mark over his fitness. He tailed off a little bit during the winter that year, but he played in arguably the worst Lincoln City side in League One, in this League One era. You know, we had a lot of injuries. Michael Appleton had been ill the year before. It was a really tough season, 21-22. I really like Lewis Fiorini. If I remember correctly, he won one of the Players of the Year award, whether it was away or young player or whatever. There's that many different Player of the Year awards. He might actually have come second or third. I remember him collecting something on the pitch before I went out and got incredibly drunk. But he has now moved to Dundee United. So he went to Stockport permanently. In the summer, he looked like an amazing signing, the sort of player that was going to have an impact, would turn around a huge profit, the sort of player that I would have loved us to have signed on a permanent deal, box-to-box midfielder, little bit of everything. But now he's gone up to Scotland, and bearing in mind Luke Planger's just gone to Motherwell on loan, it does feel like a little bit of a dare I say, a sidestep. I mean, he scored some outrageous goals for us from long range. Dara Tracy said he remembers the one away at Wimbledon in a 2-0 win. This really surprised me. Did it catch you by surprise at all?
What caught me by surprise more than anything is the fact he hasn't really kicked on from playing that season for us, because that was his first senior loan when he played for us, I believe, and he was great. And as the season went on, he grew into it. I think he got used to men's football. I agree that he struggled a little bit in the winter, but as the season progressed, he just got better and better and better. And we could all see his ability, particularly his technical ability, very similar to Whittaker in that regard, albeit in a different position. But career has just gone in a very different direction, hasn't it? So it was only actually made, I think, 29 league appearances in the 2.5 seasons since the season he had with us. And, partly that will be down to injury, of course. Partly it will be down to just not really being fancied by managerial, by the managers in charge. But I'm with you. I thought it was a really big move for him in the summer to Stockport. Newly promoted League Two club, but of course really ambitious League Two club, local to where he was based in Manchester, of course, because was previously still contracted to Manchester City, and it just made loads of sense. And I just thought he would really kick on, but it's hardly featured. And I'm just assuming this is an opportunity for him to showcase himself, maybe outside of the EFL, potentially get a permanent move up to Scotland. Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I hope he can kick on, because he really was a good player for us and was an improving player for us every kind of step of the way, really, as that season progressed. As you mentioned, in a relatively poor and less than entertaining season for us, particularly at home. So again, hope he kicks on, but I really expected him to do so, particularly at Stockport, but it just hasn't worked out for him. So I'm not surprised to see him move off the back of not playing very much football. I'm just surprised that he hasn't kicked on at Stockport.
Two other moves I want to pick up on before we go on to League One transfers. The first one, he's pretty much a forgotten man, I think, at Wrexham, but he was operating arguably in the same sort of role as Lewis Fiorini a year before Lewis Fiorini at Lincoln. That's James Jones. Now, unbelievably, he feels like he should now be a veteran. He's still only 28. He's just moved to Burton Albion, where he'll be a teammate of JJ McKiernan, who we'll be discussing later in the show. And I know you haven't prepped for this, and I've dropped it on you, and we've prepped for another player anyway. But interesting to see James Jones likely to now get more football at Burton Albion. If they get the pre-COVID James Jones, they're getting a hell of a midfielder, because he was a starting midfielder ahead of Conor McGrandles in that season. It was McGrandles in the end came in for him after COVID, but he was one of our first choice alongside George Grant. Really tailed off after COVID. Played quite a few times, actually, for Wrexham over the years. 86 starts, 22 from the bench in the league. So well over 100 appearances in total. What do you think of that move?
I think he needs to play football, doesn't he? Probably similar to Fiorini, really. Has played more since leaving us. And yeah, it was really strange in that season after COVID. And it was reported that he did pick up COVID, as I think almost everyone watching this will have done as well at some point. But he was a starting player for us, really good kind of box-to-box midfielder, got up and down the pitch really well, but had good quality on the ball, just really suited how he wanted to play. But never really seemed to be quite the same player after losing his place to Conor McGrandles. Conor really pushed on from that point as well and became a almost guaranteed starter for us, really. So it was maybe partly circumstance, really, unlucky to miss his opportunity in the team, and then Conor took his opportunity with both hands. And then I think it was quite a surprising transfer, wasn't it, when he went to Wrexham, because he's gone from a League One side in us down to the National League, and it was only really at the start of Wrexham's kind of journey up the leagues. So no one really knew where they stood just yet. They knew they had a few quid to throw about. No one really knew how much. No one really knew how long they were going to stick around for. So he was one of the first transfers really to mark that new era, I think, and was brilliant for them in the National League. Was never present. Pretty much started most games in the National League. But since they've come into the Football League, he just hasn't really been a guaranteed starter. So, yeah, he made, I think, a couple of substitute appearances this season in League One. So it's almost like you say about players not necessarily finding their level, they find their club and their system. But from Wrexham's perspective, his level is not at their level at the moment. So I'm sure he's hoping that a move to Burton, still in League One, of course, is an opportunity to play lots of games of football and I suppose confirm his stature as a League One footballer, because that might be in question at the moment in terms of a summer move.
And another one that's really interested me, because we may have an interest in this transfer, is Cohen Bramall. Now, Cohen Bramall, while he was at Lincoln, I remember having a conversation on the podcast as it came towards the transfer window that he left, expecting him to go potentially to a League Two side, because it felt like he hadn't quite made the step up with us. Lots of pace, not quite got the end product. At the time, we weren't playing wing backs, we were playing a flat back four, so he wasn't really a left back, he wasn't really a left winger. So he didn't really seem to suit. And it was remarkable that Rotherham came in and took him from us and took him to the Championship. He's played 103 times for Rotherham, all in all. This season, he's played 21 times for Rotherham, believe it or not. And he's now got a move to Portsmouth for an undisclosed fee. Don't know what that is. That's what undisclosed means. But there's a likelihood that we have a future interest in that. We tend to have a future interest in players that move on. It's unlikely to be life-changing. The first thought, those who are pretty cruel will say he must have the best agent ever. Actually, Cohen, I think, was a decent player in the right system. And it's obvious that pace really does make a difference, because to once again move into the Championship from League One, it does kind of mark him out more as a Championship player than a League One player, doesn't it?
Yeah, because I think his pace, of course, is his overriding attributes. There's no denying he has qualities elsewhere, but that is the one factor that separates him from most players at this level, to be honest. And because you can't teach it, you can't teach running that quickly. That is something that I'm sure is developed and can be honed, but ultimately it's genetics, really, more than anything. And not many players have that amount of pace, because there's having pace and being quick, and then there's been absolutely rapid. And Cohen was absolutely rapid and could just outstrip wingers and fullbacks, anyone that he was kind of chasing him. And I think when we signed him, it was a case of, you saw that, and can you hone an element of that talent? If you can polish that a little bit, then you've got a hell of a player. And yeah, I was actually quite surprised that we was able to get the fee that we got for him, and particularly surprised that he got a move up to the Championship with Rotherham. But he justified that, because he's kind of been a pretty standard Championship footballer for the last couple of seasons now, and has been a regular starter for Rotherham in League One, and has clearly performed to a standard high enough to justify another move back to the Championship. So I'm not saying he doesn't have any other attributes. Of course, you can't only have pace, but when you have the frightening pace that he has, it's very, very difficult to defend against. So if used in the right system and utilised well, it can be threatening at literally any level. So I think it's an attractive proposition for any club. And I suppose probably both teams that have signed him since us, in Rotherham and Portsmouth, are probably thinking exactly what we thought when we signed him from League Two, which is that's a threat. Can we polish that? And if so, we've got a hell of a player. And he's clearly polished it to an extent compared to where he was with us, and fair play to that. But it's really good that we might have a future interest. I don't expect it to be huge sums of money, but every little helps, doesn't it?
Quick question before we move on. Would he fit into this Lincoln City side now at left wing back?
Yes, 100%.
Would he be a starter, or would he be someone that you'd look to bring off the bench?
I think he would be a starter, to be honest. Like how we play, I think is pressing intensity and that, again, that frightening pace. And that's not to criticise anyone that's played in there. I think we've got two really good players currently fighting out for that position in Dom Jeffries and Rico Hackett. But if we had Cohen Bramall in the team, it's likely that we wouldn't have signed one of those two players to play that role. And I think he absolutely would play in this team. I think he absolutely would now, because he has improved as a player since where he was with us last time round. He's proved that by being a regular starter at the Championship level.
Wonderful. Well, like a doctor's surgery, we were overrunning massively after the first half an hour, but we've managed to pull it back to just 3 minutes overrunning, according to our numbers. And the next section might not quite be 27 minutes. It will involve Mr. Lamming again, but for now we will say goodbye to him. So he's going to drop out. Hey presto. And coming in with his 8 o'clock bulletin at 25 to 9 is Ben Ward with the latest moves in our division. So what's catching your eye in our division at the moment, Ben?
So at the minute, we've seen Dara Costello is the most recent one coming in on loan from Burnley to Northampton. Obviously, the one that caught our eye for that reason was Anthony Scully going from Portsmouth down to Colchester. Looking through the list here, annoyingly, the list I have is just EFL transfers, not necessarily just League One. So I'm trying to do some passing on that.
Drop some EFL ones in if you want, Ben. It doesn't matter, you know.
Okay. So let's go through these. We have Lewis O'Brien has gone from Nottingham Forest to Swansea on loan. We have Billy Bowden has gone from Burton to Reading on loan. We have John Egan has gone from Burnley to Hull.
I've seen Jordan Rhodes, Blackpool to Mansfield.
Jordan Rhodes has gone from Blackpool to Mansfield on loan. That is correct.
Just when you thought Mansfield's average age couldn't get up any higher at all. Genuinely, Mansfield now have a higher average age than the average Village Hall bingo team.
I didn't know you could have a bingo team. Connor Ripley has gone from Port Vale to Swindon for an undisclosed fee. And then this is, at that point, we're getting back to about 5 o'clock, which is where we say Verdane Oliver has gone from Bradford to Shrewsbury on loan. So
now, in there, you mentioned Billy Bowden going from Burton to Reading, and Billy Bowden has gone to Reading to replace Sam Smith. And so for the next 20, that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
That's a segue.
I know it is. So for the next 25 minutes, we're going to hand over to this fella. He's going to be the presenter. And Charlie, myself, and Chris have all picked one League One transfer. This transfer
that's
window
not quite
really
right.
stood out.
You and Charlie have picked one.
Oh, yeah. Well, Chris obviously picked 2 because Chris is special.
And the reason that Gary has pulled me in to do the presenting on this bit is because there are 2 Scandinavian players that Chris has chosen, and I don't think Gary knows how to pronounce their names.
That's not why I've done it. I genuinely realised that we haven't got the little bit of the 6 monthly review from Charlie and Chris, and I need a week. So I kind of figured that I would get you in to present it. Share the load, share the love.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, let's talk about this one then. First off, you picked a key transfer for League One this year, this window rather. The window's been a bit mad. There's a lot of money going around. The reported fee for Sam Smith, paid by Wrexham, is around £2 million, and as you can see on the graphic there, 25 appearances, 11 goals, and 2 assists for Sam Smith at Reading. Gary, why did this one catch your eye?
It caught my eye for a number of reasons. First of all, because I think it's one of the first times that we've seen League One that we've seen Wrexham truly flex their financial muscles. They didn't really in the summer. They have a big wage bill. Don't get me wrong. They've come up with a big wage commitment. So in terms of spend, they're still right up there. But there was a lot of expectation in the summer that they were going to be coming in and spending £2-3 million on players, and they were going to be getting ex-Premier League players. It was going to be all Hollywood FC again. And actually, they had quite a muted and reserved approach to transfers. So this was a big money buy for them, which is one of the reasons why I've picked it. Now, secondly, we're not expected to do any business today, from what I understand, unless there's something something afoot elsewhere that we'll find out about. But I'm not entirely convinced there is. And one of the reasons I think it's been tougher to do business, and Jez may confirm this when he comes on, is that the landscape in League One has changed massively. A couple of years ago, Will Grigg moved to Sunderland for £4 million, and it was headline news. League One player, £3 million, £4 million deal, whether that was with add-ons, etc. It was headline news. Now, this is a run-of-the-mill transfer. It's £2 million. It's the third tier of English football. And I just find it absolutely gobsmacking. Now, this is a decent player. Don't get me wrong. He was at Reading as a youngster. He had several loan spells, Oxford, Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Tranmere, Cheltenham, all spring to mind. Varied success. I think his best was 8 goals in 30 for Cambridge. Moved to Cambridge permanently in 2021. Scored 21 in 57 in his first season, 14 in 52 in his second season. Decent return, 35 goals in 109 appearances. If you get that as a striker, it's not a bad return. It's not a brilliant return, but it's not a bad return. That earned him a move back to Reading, and he's done relatively well there. 16 in 37 in 23-24, 15 of those in the league in 34 games, so almost a goal every other game. 11 in 25, as you say, this season, almost a goal in every other game. But you're talking 27 goals in 63 appearances, and they've paid £2 million for him. And I really just wanted to mention it because it's not the big move for the summer. It's not the big move in our division. It's not even the second or the third or the fourth biggest of the season when you throw Joe Taylor and Adam Stansfield and Christoph Klara and the money that's being spent. And for me, I think that this move more than anything for a player that's played all of his football, looking at this in League One, he played 8 championship games for Reading, but otherwise he's played all of his football in League One and League Two, and it's £2 million. And for me, it's just a little bit gobsmacking. That we're not going to spend £2 million on a striker. We're not going to spend £500,000 on a striker, and it just underlines the sort of climate that we're in at the minute, and some of what I perceive to be the struggles that the club is going to have with transferring or moving for players who have got a reputation. So,
yeah, I mean, the other thing as well is, of course, he's not the only big name player that they brought in this window, is it? They signed, was it Jay Rodriguez? He's gone there as well. So, they're not afraid to spend the money. So, yeah.
Who's got it?
No, yeah. Just
some will spend it who haven't got it, won't they? So,
well, that's very true. So, yeah, understandable one there. Looking at Sam Smith. So, what I'm going to do now is drop Gaz out so he can drain the lizard, and I will bring in Mr. Charlie Beeston to talk about his choice. How you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm very well. I guarantee Gary's buzzing at it being called a nice lizard,
Well, not given the message you just sent to our group chat. But anyway,
I've not seen that yet.
Yeah, well, there we go. So, look, Charlie, your choice of signing is actually one that we've experienced firsthand, isn't it? You've gone with Tom Bloxham, who went from Shrewsbury to Blackpool earlier on in this window. So why did this one take your eye and think, oh, yeah, well, let's talk about Tom Bloxham?
Do you know what? There's a few reasons for this. Now, Tom Bloxham is obviously not going to be the biggest move of this window or the season or for Blackpool in particular or any club at all in League One, right? And he's probably not going to be the one that will go on to do the best. Inevitably, there'll be another £10 million Birmingham signing that they make at 10.59 later on that'll take that mantle, obviously. But I'll be watching Tom Bloxham at Blackpool closer than I will be doing most of those other transfers. So I think it's a really good move from both club and player, actually. I like Tom Bloxham, did when he was at Shrewsbury. And honestly, that game that he played against us, what was it, a week ago tomorrow, he showed exactly why Blackpool wanted to sign him. I think he really, really impressed in that. Now, he may not have the best goal-scoring record, and I get it. If you're going to be a striker or forward, you're going to want them to be bagging 20 goals a season. I get that. But I think his interplay, his chance creation, his defending from the front as well, his passing stats overall, I think all of them are top-end League One. I honestly do think that what he can do with Blackpool is potentially take them up to the next level. They're on a good run right now. I believe they haven't lost in their last kind of 7 or 8 games. And 6th place in League One and potentially maybe 1 or 2 more in the playoff spots, but you'd think mainly 6th place at the moment is potentially still up for grabs. I just wonder if this signing at this time, he could help elevate Blackpool whilst they're on this good run to really take it up to that next level. Again, like Gary said, the amount of money that's being spent in League One is ridiculous. I don't know what the fee is, obviously, on Tom Bloxham. It's undisclosed. But the fact that it's undisclosed and it's not being reported probably means it isn't in the millions, because normally the minute you hit those kind of big numbers, the fees actually start getting leaked, as we've seen with the likes of Sam Smith, even though they may officially be reported as undisclosed. And I just think that this is a really shrewd signing, again, from a Blackpool side who are going to want to be taking that next step up. And I think have honestly got the team on paper to be able to do it. So I just think the way that he's going to be able to complement their overall style of play and the team is exactly what it is. Exactly what they want. So this will definitely be one that I'm watching closely.
Yeah, I mean, he the conversations that we had with the folks over at It's Not Orange around the ahead of the Blackpool game, and after as well. Actually, they've been really impressed with Bloxham since he's come in. He's definitely made an immediate impact, and unfortunately, he very much did that against us, didn't he? So solid signing. So let's bring in Mr. Lamming for a second, and here he is now. I'm just going to drop that. Have you changed your tie, Chris?
Maybe.
What's he done? Oh,
Is that because
but
Gary?
we would have all been matching.
Is that because Gary was mean to you? Yeah. Okay.
Picking on me, wasn't he?
The thing is, I actually noticed literally just before we went live. This is I have this new today, and the way that the lighting is in here and the way the camera's picked it up makes this tie look neon. It's mad. Yeah, it's really bizarre. But so yeah, I mean, Chris, before we come on to your picks, any thoughts on either Sam Smith or Tom Bloxham?
Well, yeah. To be honest, just particularly from what Gus said about Sam Smith, I think I echo everything he mentioned. It just goes to show what we're up against, doesn't it? Really, for a player who is, undoubtedly a good footballer at this level. There's no denying that. But to go to a league rival, a team, albeit a relatively unique team at the moment, but a team who have just come up from League Two, I think that just goes to show just the extent that we're fighting against here at the top end of League One. And Tom Bloxham, I almost picked this one myself, Charlie, but I'm pleased that I didn't, because it means that we would have doubled up, wouldn't we? Because it is interesting. It's interesting because you'd look at Blackpool losing their top goal scorer to Hull City, and statistically, Tom Bloxham doesn't really stand out. Everyone watching this, or most people probably know I'm quite a big fan of the statistics, but actually Tom Bloxham doesn't massively stand out statistically, but he is a player that you could just ooze his potential when you see his physical profile and the eye test. He's one of very few centre forwards to have given Podio kind of as tough an evening as he had on Tuesday night. I was really impressed with him. I think it's also worth pointing out that he is definitely a centre forward by trade, but has played out on the wing regularly for Shrewsbury. So that maybe masks some of those statistics and some of his out goal scoring. But I think he'd be a really good player for Blackpool. I think that's a really smart pickup.
Fair enough. Right. Well, we'll say goodbye to Charlie for a minute. Bye. And let's talk about yours, Chris. So the reason I'm sure this is the reason why. Let's look at your first choice here. And let me pull this up so I can get this right. We have Anders Hagelskjar. I think that's correct. Yeah. Moved from Mould to Wickham for a reported fee of £500,000 with 19 appearances and 1 goal so far this season. So,
yeah, if you don't mind, if you could introduce both of them, because the point that I wanted to make with these two signings is that they're kind of joined together, really, rather than the individuals themselves. It's the point.
Yeah, so the second one is Magnus Westergaard, also to Wickham from, where is that one? That is Viborg. Reported fee of £800,000. So Wickham spending a rumoured or reported £1.3 million on 2 players. Westergaard here with 15 appearances and 2 goals. So why did you pick these 2? And why are they linked, Chris?
Well, they're linked because they're both Danes and they're both going to Wycombe Wanderers for significant fees. And I think there's just so much to dig into here, really. So I think first and foremost, let's just think about this from a Wycombe Wanderers perspective in just sheer finance. Wycombe, of course, under new ownership or recently new owners, and have had an ability to spend higher than they have ever in their history, which has allowed them to elevate themselves up the league. However, they are still massively overperforming in terms of how they've played this season. They are a legitimately good football team and very much deserve to be where they are in the league. But I think from a financial point of view, if any of us were to say, or used to tell any of us a year or two ago that Wycombe Wanderers would be breaking their transfer fee in the January transfer window, spending approximately £500,000 on a player, we would all go, I don't believe you. That's not a very Wycombe thing to do. And if you was then to say they're going to do it again a week later in the transfer window and double that fee, it would just be it'd fall off your chair, I think. So
While,
in terms of
also, it probably should be added, while also turning down an alleged £6 million fee for a player from Luton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Richard Kone, who I love Richard Kone's story, by the way, just in terms of where he came from. They're playing in the Homeless World Cup in 2019 to now being on the back of a £6+ million move potentially to Luton. But this is obviously all before that talk happened. This was just money they had in the bank that they were willing to spend without selling Kone. So I think firstly, just in pure numbers, it's just really surprising to see Wycombe spending, significant transfer fees on that sort of player. And then when you see clubs of that sort of size spending reasonable fees on players, usually they are players of a certain age, which you expect to have an element of sell-on value. But they're not. They're players that you class to be in their prime, 26, 27 years old, respectively, a centre-back and a central midfielder. So, yeah, these are players who they're signing for now. They're not signing these for the future. These are players that they're bringing in to improve their chances this season. And it just really took me by surprise, really, to see Wycombe shopping in that market, sign players of that kind of age profile. So, yeah, it was surprising for finance and age profile. So that's kind of one thing in itself. That's the reason I chose them, because it kind of made you think blink, didn't it? And kind of take a double take when you see that on the transfers list. But I think there's something else slightly different to touch on here as well, which is we are seeing a lot more football clubs shopping in the Scandinavian market these days. Of course, we've done so with the signing of Eric Ring, but there are a few teams doing that in League One, particularly in the Championship. We actually see not a huge amount of money being spent in the Championship in terms of signing players directly from League One. There's a couple of moves, but nothing significant really. But they're shopping elsewhere. Whether that's because there is a premium on domestic players, I think that's definitely a case. But we are certainly starting to see a trend forming here where teams are starting to sign and get good value from Scandinavia. So it's something I expect to continue. I think the ESC rules are allowing for that these days a lot more than they did when Brexit initially happened. I think we tapped into the Irish market ourselves quite a lot, and that's something that's been exploited quite a lot by a lot of other clubs. I know we've tried to have our finger in the Scandinavian market a little bit, but it appears that everyone else appears to be doing that now. So it just makes me think, what's the next trendy market to go into in which gives you good value? And I suppose that then leads on to the question is, do we expect this sort of thing to continue? Because we all know about our club model, and when we can, we'd like to sign players that have potential that allows us to of course allow them to grow with us. So I think from a wage perspective that helps us, because if we use Paudie O'Connor as an example, when we signed him as a high performing League Two centre back that was at a team that didn't make the playoffs, so a top half League Two team, but a good player at that level, and his wage would reflect that. Now Paudie is progressed into a player significantly better than a League Two centre back, hasn't he? But I imagine his current wage is probably similar to what it was there. So that's the benefit in what it gives you now. It allows us to have at the end of their development a player of a higher level than when we signed them. I think that makes total sense. And also, of course, there's the financial side of things from sell-on. If you are able to get a fee, as we have had success with many players over the last few windows, of course, most recently, Lasse Sorensen, Lucas Jensen, it makes total sense. But I think what's really interesting is we're not seeing Championship clubs sign that many players from League One. And I think a lot of that comes out the fact that we're not seeing many Premier League teams sign players from the Championship. Yeah. So there's only, I think there's only been one player move from the Championship to the Premier League so far this window. It'll be two if the Alex Palmer deal goes through, and that will be Essa from Millwall to Crystal Palace, which is a very Crystal Palace signing, isn't it? By the way, probably the one Premier League club that really does still shop in that market. What that probably means is that there's actually not a huge amount of money flowing around in the domestic ecosystem. So what that means is clubs are then looking for value, maybe more so than they've been forced to before. So maybe we're not shopping too much in League One. So I think it just creates this really interesting ecosystem in terms of we all want to sell players on, but who do we sell them to now? And maybe more and more clubs are looking abroad to try and find that value.
Well, I think the point is that we've got for ages the Championship was essentially a mini Premier League, or a copy of the Premier League, and we're now getting to the point where the League One is getting to be a copy of the Championship, and that's slowly bleeding together with the wages and everything else. It's just very, very interesting one. So I've just seen a League One transfer bit of news that I'm going to mention here. Nottingham Forest have signed Tyler Binden from Reading. That is a piece that looks like it's been there for a while. I've got graphics disappearing all the time. I think Gary's playing about, so I'm going to bring him back in, and I'm going to point out that Gary has also changed his tie. What's going on? Is this coordinated?
You changed your tie as well? No, right. So I went to make a cup of tea in my Lincoln City themed mug, and the pots from dinner are still in the sink. And I turned the tap on, and it splashed pasta sauce. And I didn't get it on my shirt, but it was all up my tie, so I've had to change to a red tie. Why did Chris change?
Because you picked on me.
Because you bullied him.
No, dearie me. Okay, no worries. Right. So if I can take over for a moment, then please, gentlemen. Thank you for that. That was incredibly fascinating. I don't know why I'm saying that. I didn't watch it, but I'm sure it was fascinating.
Yay,
anyway.
You hurt my feelings.
Hey, brilliant. So we are closing in on 9 o'clock. We were scheduled to have Jez George on at 9 o'clock. At the moment, that looks more like it's going to be 9:30. So this is a deadline day special. Are we expecting anything from Lincoln City? Well, Michael Horton tweeted out at about 10 o'clock this morning that nothing was expected. I think if anything was going to happen, it was more likely to be an outgoing. Whether anything's moving on that or not, I don't know. If there was something, normally somebody like Pete O'Rourke would have the details. As we heard from Conor McGrandles, there would always be an inkling. A player's not suddenly at 9 o'clock going to go, oh, I'm going to move teams. Paudie O'Connor can't get down to Plymouth, for instance, for a medical. So, but you never ever know what's going to happen on deadline day. But usually, if we schedule something to happen, it doesn't happen, and it only happens if I go out to walk the dog, and that ain't going to happen. So, just go back. I wanted to just go back over a couple of the comments. JRS Special has put Bloxham was decent. Talk of Paul paying 300,000 for him unconfirmed. I really liked Tom Bloxham as well. I liked him at Morecambe. I liked him at Shrewsbury, and then I really like him now he's at Blackpool. Apart from the fact that he's playing against us, I think he's a good player. I think he's going to end up in the Championship. So I think he's really interesting signing. It doesn't look like there is going to be any major moves for the next kind of half hour or so in League One either. So what that means is we are now going to look at some of our loan players that have gone out. Now, one of the things that always tends to happen around this time of year is loan players either get recalled or there's talk of them being recalled. A couple of years ago, we lost Tyler Walker quite late on in the transfer window. We replaced him with Tyrese John-Jules, though, so it's all good. We've obviously then hung on to Bailey Cadamartri. Yes, he's injured, but he couldn't play for another club anyway, so we've hung on to him this window. We have had a number of players out on loan at the beginning of for the first half of the season, and we also have two players who have moved recently in this window. For the next hour, we were once we'd spoken to Jez, we were planning on looking at our transfer window thus far. So we're going to do half an hour of that now with Charlie Beeston looking at the loans. Then we may have Jez 9:30 till 10-ish, and then we may have myself and Chris looking back over the permanent moves that have happened this transfer window, and also perhaps discussing the ones that haven't happened. So Charlie Beeston is back. Is it warm in Gibraltar, Charlie, at the moment?
Nope, it's been pissing it down with rain all day.
Excellent. I'm really pleased about that because it's been quite sunny here. It's been quite nice. So I am delighted with the fact that it hasn't been that nice for you. Now, so we've got a list of players who we can talk about. But I would like to talk about two players who have gone out this window, if we may. And the first one that I will throw over to you is Rob Street. Now, Rob, it's fair to say, didn't have the best of starts to his Lincoln career. Probably struggled a little bit in the early part of the season. Looked half decent towards the end of his it's not the end of his spell at Lincoln, but before his move, I think he came on and looked quite energetic. There's a thought of him being kind of a Ben House type striker. You know, he's a presser. He might chip in with 10 goals or something along those lines. He's gone to Doncaster. How's he got on since he's moved to Doncaster, Charlie?
Quite well. They quite like him at Doncaster, and understandably so. He's already bagged 2 goals, one of them being in his debut against Port Vale as well, when he actually only came on at half-time. In terms of minutes, he's not necessarily been starting on a regular basis, but he's obviously still been able to find the back of the net on 2 occasions, as he also did at the weekend when they faced MK Dons at home in a 2-1 victory. He scored the second and ultimately the winner in that game as well. I think with Rob Street, it's weird, isn't it? Because he had that game against whoever it was, I can never remember, in the Football League Trophy, where he really didn't look great. But then, since then, he showed a little bit of his kind of raw ability and that potential at Lincoln. And I honestly think this League Two loan move to Doncaster will hopefully do in the world of good. And by the looks of it, it's already started to do that. Hopefully, he can just get a couple more regular starts and he'll probably be able to show that. But so far, he's shown that he deserves to have those starts.
Yeah, so he's one of the players that came in on a 4-year deal over the summer. He's probably one of the players that doubters are referring to when they talk about our transfer strategy in the summer not working. Now, obviously, I always say judge a transfer window 12 months or 18 months down the line, not 6 months down the line. But Rob Street in particular, and JJ McKinnon, who we'll come on to in a minute, 4-year deals. So there's very little that we can read into them going out on loan in terms of their future, because they obviously still have a future at Lincoln City. But Ali Smith came in on a 2-year deal and obviously didn't have a future at Lincoln City when he was loaned out to Colchester last season. Any parallels, Charlie, or is it completely different?
Yeah, I'm not drawing those, if I'm honest. I think we spoke in the summer about how great it was that we had the squad depth that we had, especially, for example, in midfield with JJ McKinnon, and the fact that we came out of the window with more strikers than we've probably ever had at the club at one given time in history, or as long as I can remember anyway. So for Rob Street and JJ McKinnon, though, being maybe lower down the pecking order in terms of that overall squad depth, you then suddenly start to worry a little bit about them and their potential, the fact they are on those long-term deals, and are they really going to get the game time to properly hit that kind of level of potential that we're hoping for if they stay at Lincoln City in the short term. And honestly, a loan move then is the best option for them. It helps us, it helps the player, probably helps the team in League Two or even the bottom end of League One, as obviously we'll come on to with JJ in a little bit. But the squad depth's all well and good, but you can only have 11 players on the pitch at any given time, 10 outfielders. So there becomes a point when we have to start thinking about what's going to be best for long term just as much as short term. I think these loan moves are exactly what those players need and what we need to kind of reach that long term potential after 4 years. We're not just thinking about, are they going to help us get the playoffs in the 24-25 season?
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously in terms of game time, it's sure to be limited once you're out of all of the cup competitions. And the big one, it's the cup everybody hates, the Virtue Trophy. But it's the one where the likes of Rob Street and JJ McKinnon have had game time. You know, Rob, I think he came on against Manchester City. Did he score in that game? Was that where he got his first goal?
He did, yeah.
JJ McKinnon scored a belter in that game as well. And you think perhaps if we'd gone a little bit deeper in that competition, do you think the likes of Rob Street might have hung around? Or do you think that the loan spell was exactly what he needed, irrespective of whether there was another 1 or 2 games he might have played in?
I think the loan move was still the right choice and still the choice that we would have gone with as a club. I get the point, but also then you start getting to the later stages and suddenly the mind isn't on, okay, we can actually give some of those fringe players starts, but then the mind goes to, actually, we've got a chance at Wembley and an extra 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 in the bank with each win. So then I think the opportunities in that competition are suddenly limited just as much as they are in, let's say, the FA Cup once you hit the third round.
So let's move on to JJ McKinnon. Now, here's a player that I do really like. And my honest opinion at the minute, Rob Street, the jury is still out, but he's got a long-term deal, so we'll see how he develops through that. I didn't rate him particularly when he was at Shrewsbury, but I'm not. I'm just a pundit. I'm just a fan. I'm not somebody that coaches players, so I'm not saying that he hasn't got a future with us. But JJ McKinnon, every time I've seen him, I really like this lad. I see comparisons with Peter Gain in the way that he conducts himself on the ball, the way he caresses and treats the ball. I think he glides. Peter Game, when he came to the club, let's not forget, had a season and a half where he was on the fringes. I think he came in the 1990 season, and he only really exploded onto the scene properly in 2002, 2003. So, there's no rush, in my opinion, with JJ. Probably a little bit unlucky, I think, with the injury against Morecambe. A little bit unlucky earlier in the season where he was kind of in and out of the side again through injury. Jack Moylan's emergence probably in that 10 role as well, as kind of put him down the pecking order a little bit. He may be kicking himself at Burton Albion because he goes to Burton Albion, Jack Moylan gets injured, and we bring in Joe Gardner, who Chris and I will talk about in a little while. But JJ, he's had a hell of a start, hasn't he, to his Burton Albion career?
He has. He's really impressed a lot of Burton Albion fans, with many comments on social media being along the lines of, how on earth have Lincoln let him go? Surely Lincoln's other players aren't actually that good, sort of thing, thinking that obviously JJ McKinnon must be really far down the pecking order. And in reality, he's not. But again, it's showing that we value his long-term development more than having him as a squad option for the second half of the season, which actually I think puts us as a football club in a really good stead when we're trying to bring in other players later down the line as well. I don't think we can kind of underestimate those sorts of intangibles to other players who we're trying to sign a little bit later down the line. But yeah, he's really impressed. Got a goal against Rotherham in that 4-2 victory that they had, and then followed that up immediately with an assist a few days later when they played Reading as well. And again, he's done really, really well. And it's not just his goals and assists ratio so far that he's impressed with, but it's his overall style of play. And I'm the exact same as you guys. I really liked him whenever he got his opportunities at Lincoln. He was probably just a victim of circumstance. At the end of the day, we've probably only really got one position in that midfield that a JJ McKinnon style player can play, and it was always kind of fought up between him, Jack Moylan, and Tom Bayliss. Tom Bayliss obviously got out injured, but then Jack Moylan suddenly kind of burst onto the scene in that position for the next kind of 4, 5, 6 games, and then Tom Bayliss came back, and he was always going to be fighting for it. I 100% agree with you, and it was a point I was going to make as well, though, that honestly, if the Jack Moylan injury had happened a week earlier, JJ McKinnon would not have gone out on loan. I obviously I don't know that, but that would be the way that I saw it going, because he'd have got the game time. He's good enough to be playing for us. The fact that he's on loan from us to another League One side kind of proves that point, I think. But he should hopefully be able to help Burton in their fight for survival and potentially get a good few more goal contributions and come back to us a lot sharper of a player than maybe we saw in the first half of the season with those little injuries that he was picking up.
Yeah, now Harrison asks, and it kind of obliterates us facially. I can hide behind that. I know they've only been here a short time, but can either of you see a championship player in either of those long-term signings? Sometimes you instantly know whether they'll be able to make that step up or not. My honesty shout, I've left that question to now because I firmly believe that there's potential for JJ McKinnon to step up again. And the regular game time in League One as well. I mean, it's absolutely superb. And to be fair, Don Clark, I think, makes a good point here. He says if JJ can be a little less lightweight and make better choices, he has a chance. He says not hopeful, though. Joe Horner was with an old uni friend at Barnsley on Saturday, and JJ really stood out, took the game by the scruff of the neck, but without the end product that will come. And again, I think it will. But like I say, Burton fans really like him. I've actually seen him credited with more assists. He's got 5 games, 1 goal, 1 assist. But I think the BBC website credited him with a couple of others during games. And they're taken off him. So look, at the end of the day, he's gone out on loan to get regular game time. I think he's more likely to be a permanent fixture in our squad next season than Rob Street is. But you never know, do you? Because look at Freddie Draper and Jovan McCarmer. 2-3 years ago, you would have gone, Draper will be the firmer fixture in the first team, and Jovan was kind of almost like a project. And yet Jovan's come through, and he's a big player for us now. So for us to try and compare 2 players as nothing but laymen is quite unfair. And as they say, or as I say regularly, comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, it is. On that, I do agree, by the way. JJ, I think, has the potential and honestly some of the ability already to be higher up in League One than where Burton Albion are, although Burton's team, especially when you look at it kind of on paper, is definitely much higher than what their league position currently suggests. And I think they will probably move up a little bit higher in the division over the second half of the campaign as well. But yeah, I really do think he's got the ability to be moving up there. Rob Street, who knows? But one good stint at Doncaster, he comes back to us, maybe gets a bit more of a run of games. We spoke about it before. Sometimes all you need, especially as a striker, is a run of games and a good bit of confidence, and then suddenly your whole career trajectory can change, can't it? So I certainly wouldn't rule out either of them from making the step up.
So we're looking at some of the other loan players as well that are currently out. I'm going to start with the one who's most likely to not have been discussed much previously, but is somebody that we brought in as a project player. I actually think we brought him in as a project player a year ago in the transfer window. He's on loan at Tranmere Rovers, Zach Bradshaw. How's he getting on, Charlie?
Very well. And yes, he was literally a year ago today, wasn't he? I think he got announced the morning after deadline day because the paperwork, well, they didn't really want to announce it on the night, I don't think, at the time. But yeah, he's been a decent squad option at Tranmere. I think, once again, his stats for players in his position per 90, and again, I know it's all of that, and we can only take so much from those, but they're actually quite strong in League Two. Aerially, he's been really strong and really impressive, and his ball playing stats have been quite strong as well. Granted, there have certainly been a couple of weak areas to his game. That's understandable for such a young player playing sort of professionally so many games for really his kind of first proper season doing that. But as a left-footed option as well, and a potential future option for us, bringing him in as that project player, I think he's had a great start to some proper EFL football down in League Two from exactly the kind of situation that we would want him to be in to really kind of bring his level a little bit further up in that kind of left centre half, left wing back role.
What we'll do, we'll pick on one other player who is likely to come back, and then if you're happy, we'll bring Chris in as well just to comment because he's sat eagerly waiting in the wings. But just a really good point here from Nige. This is about Rob Street. He says he's learning from Billy Sharp at Doncaster, so that's not bad. I think that's a really interesting point. And again, I kind of I'll bring Chris in on this as well, if that's okay. There he is. I didn't give him much warning. That kind of learning from somebody like Billy Sharp or James Collins, Freddie Draper, is that something that you think is often overlooked by players, by fans when players go out on loan, Chris?
100%. Yeah, massively overlooked. Because we see players for, if they're lucky, 90 minutes every week. Whereas that player is training every day for hours with these players. And yeah, some of it will, I imagine, be directed, and some of it I imagine will be literal kind of mentorship. Some of it I imagine will be just quite organic and just little things that you pick up. It's only a very small thing, but I can relate to it myself, right? And I was playing county football when I was much younger, and I was playing a year up, so I wasn't the first choice goalkeeper, and I felt my distribution was pretty good. I thought my ball striking was pretty good, but the guy that was playing ahead of me was outstanding at it. A guy called Ricky Drury, who, for people that know local football, scored a last minute, I think, winner in an FA Cup qualifying round, I think for Holbeach. Anyway, that's a different story. But he's absolutely outstanding with his feet, much before the age when it was kind of fashionable. I never asked him to show me how to kick a ball. It's different. And I never really had any specific coaching, but I just paid attention because he had a particular strength to his game, which I wanted to improve upon. And I kind of developed that just off the bit of just spending more time with the guy. And that's, me playing very low level, semi-professional football. And if an idiot like me can pick things up, I imagine in a professional environment, learning off someone who is as experienced and as just high quality in that kind of 18-yard box as Billy Sharp, then it can only be a positive. So I do think it's overlooked quite a lot. Yeah, I think it can be a massive thing. And I think James Collins will have a role to play in that regard here.
Thank you, Chris. Well, we'll let you go and change your tie again. Because Richard Godson has noticed there's another tie change. As the producer never heard of continuity. Ben's the producer, so we'll blame Ben for it.
Don't go blaming me. I had nothing to do with this decision to change ties. Not me.
Right. Right, let's look now at Oshin, because obviously he was at Peterborough Sports. He's come back. He's now gone to Boston United. a player who I know that the club have got high hopes for. We've seen him a little bit more this season playing centre half. And actually, I thought he looked very composed. I thought he looked more composed this season than he did last season when he appeared against, I think, Derby. There was no criticism of him back then. That it was a tough time and a tough game. But I thought he looked more like a senior pro this time, slotted in well, did really well. Playing regularly for Boston, I understand. And it's a tough old job of Boston at the moment because they are going down back to the National League North. They beat York and then they got beat by Spennymoor on penalties in the FA Trophy the other day. What's the general feeling?
Look, I think, first of all, exactly what you were saying there. Like, we've all now seen him in the EFL Trophy on numerous occasions, and they're like little regular milestone updates that we're kind of getting on Oisin, aren't they? They are kind of every few months, and we'll get to really see how he's progressing overall as a football player, albeit only in one game out of every so often. But he is definitely becoming much more of that kind of professional senior centre half now, and I also think that's really, really important. Honestly, in those sorts of positions for a lad like Oisin, chances are the more games he plays, just the better he'll become. And I don't really think you can just underestimate the number of minutes somebody's playing in professional football, especially at that young age. He had a really strong first half of the season at Peterborough Sports, actually, which is where he started out the campaign, and then got the step up to Boston in this January window, and is now, again, being a regular player for them, and hopefully will maybe help them fight for survival. I don't know, I'm just trying to be nice to Boston. I am fully aware that they are destined for the drop, but I actually think that, again, actually could be quite a good atmosphere for Sheen to be in, to be able to kind of test himself in that. Again, also likely to be training with the first team on a semi-regular basis as well. So, again, it's a really good move. He's impressing there. Peterborough Sports absolutely loved him. Hopefully Boston, come the summer, will be saying the exact same thing.
Still at Peterborough Sports, MJ Kamara. Now, although he broke his foot, he was earning rave reviews before that happened. Again, they're still quite keen on him. How's he been doing? Is he back playing, Charlie, now?
He's not. No, he is still out. He sustained that injury back in October, and he hasn't actually played since. But you're right, he was a very regular starter. I think he appeared in all 11 games from the start of the season up until that point before that injury. And he was a really, really solid option in the league. Again, somebody in that kind of a position. All we want, I'm sure, from the football club is to see him playing regular football. Just hope that this injury doesn't set him back because, like you say, he was very, very popular.
Who else have we got out on loan? I mean, Ali Smith not expecting to come back, but how's he doing at Wimbledon?
Again, he is one of the best statistical midfielders in League Two. Wimbledon fans absolutely adore him. Defensively is where he's actually shone a lot over the course of this campaign. But once again, like you were just saying, that he's not going to be coming back to us. However, I would be quite surprised if he didn't have some kind of an interest from League One in the summer. And honestly, I really hope for his sake that he does. There's definitely a player in there. There was a few issues, I think, when he was with us. There was certainly a few things that we'd picked out on the podcast where we'd have just hoped that he was ever so slightly better than what he actually was in certain aspects. However, I think he's hopefully going to be able to kind of round that off for himself so that in the summer he can get himself either top-end League Two or potentially even bottom-end League One. And that might be with Wimbledon themselves, the way that they're going.
Excellent. And finally, Jez is coming on any minute now. But Andy Brown says, any news on the lad at the Bantams? That's Jay Ben. How's he getting on?
Yeah, again, it's a weird one with him. He has been out injured over the last kind of month and a half. He got a bit of an injury between Christmas and New Year. But he had a reasonable first half of the season, 11 starts, making 3 assists as well, playing quite a sort of attacking right back, right midfield, right wing back sort of role. Interestingly, again, he has some really, really strong stats for his chance creation compared to other players that are playing in that area of the field. One of the best in the league for chances created and successful crosses, which I think is something that he started to show whenever he got the little glimpses of opportunities at Lincoln. So I'm really glad for him that he's able to kind of do that in League Two. I think he's one of those players that's probably got the biggest question mark over him as to whether or not we even whether or not we do see him as a future first team squad player at all, or whether this is again an exit loan similar to Ali Smith. It's going to be really interesting again just to see how he comes back from injury, whether he can keep it at that same level that maybe he started to show, even step it up an extra level, or if maybe this injury costs him a little bit too much time to be able to prove to the club that he's ready to be League One ready. Ready to be League One ready? We'll ignore that, but yeah.
Ready to be League One ready. That would be an edit if we weren't live, wasn't it? Oh, dearie me. Well, thank you very much, Charlie. Really appreciate your input there. Now, we are actually waiting for Jez. He is due to be with us around 9:20 for half an hour. So we've got some questions. Charlie, you're going to come back in a little while, aren't you? And ask Jez a couple of questions as well, because you were the only one that replied to me. So we'll see Charlie again in a short while. Ben, are you ready with a League One update? Is there anything happening at all before we get Jez?
Hello. Yeah, so there's been a couple more transfers. We've got, was it Tawanda Chirewa? I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation, but he's gone from Wolves to Huddersfield on loan until the end of the season. Ed Turns has gone from Brighton to Exeter on a permanent deal. So that's, on the face of it, a bit of a coup for Exeter. And then Randell Williams has gone from Bolton to Leyton Orient, and that tops up from Tyler Binden going from Reading to Forest. So that's all that we've had over the past, past hour or so, I think.
Just for the record, Magnus Westergaard and Angus Hagelsgaard. So you see, I didn't have any problem with pronouncing them at all.
What was that last one?
Hagelsgaard.
That's different to the way you pronounced it first time, isn't it?
Is it really?
Yeah.
And you know what? While I was offline, I even went on a pronunciation website and Googled it to find out how it was pronounced. I had it all in my head, and then literally I've looked at it and thought, shit, I've no idea. I said that I can pronounce Anders really well, but Hagelsgaard, I'm not really sure about that at all. So,
there have been two more transfers that I've just seen. Ben Killip has gone from Barnsley to Portsmouth for an undisclosed fee, and Kyle Edwards has gone from Oxford to Stevenage for an undisclosed fee as well.
Interesting. So we are waiting for Jez. We have got some questions queued up for him. We may take some from the floor, we shall see, but there's certain people I think whose questions might be a little challenging, but we've got a few challenging ones as well. We really want to know about the players that have come in, the players that have gone out, all that sort of stuff, and Jez is always great value. So we are just waiting for him to join us. It does feel like quite a quiet deadline day, not just at Lincoln, but across the board, doesn't it?
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a huge amount. I mean, normally around this time you start to get the rumours of one massive signing somewhere in the country, but it doesn't seem to be happening at the moment. There was one question actually that we discussed not that long ago in the fan zone that I've just seen from Josh in the chat. He says, "Are you surprised that Joe Morell's still a free agent?"
No, given his injury issues and some disciplinary issues. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't pop up somewhere at some point, but not entirely. Not entirely sure. What about yourself?
I am. I mean, I wonder if there's a wage issue there as well. If he's got a figure set in his head and he's not necessarily willing to budge on that, I would have expected to see him probably upper end of League Two by now. But yeah, I'm quite surprised he's not somewhere. I say upper end of League Two. Let's be honest, we're all thinking Colchester.
Of course, why not?
Yeah. So I would have expected to see him back in at some point in football, because he was at a house, but he was our house, wasn't he, when he was here?
Our house. So we have just got the message. We are just about to, or Jez is just about to connect now. Luke is literally. I keep looking up there because my screen is. I've got a screen up there, so I don't just keep looking to the heavens as I was doing about against Rotherham on on New Year's Day. I am genuinely looking at something. So we are about to connect. Whether we'll get connection issues or not, we don't know. That we are, just to recap, about to have Jez George on the show. And we are going to be talking about the transfers. So at the moment, I'm going to be asking him about the goalkeeper situation. We're going to ask him about Dylan Duffy. We're going to ask him about Tom Hamer and the defensive situation. We're going to ask about James Collins and Sam Clucas. And we're going to ask about JJ and Rob Street as well. So how were we looking? Jez looks like he's in the green room. So Ben, if you'll do the magic.
Yeah, if we're all ready, he's looking all right. He's looking ready now. Here we go. Welcome to Jez. How we doing, mate? You well?
Okay. Don't know if "well" is the right word today, but okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Well, yeah. So how's today been for you? I mean, obviously on the public face of it, it seems a bit quiet, but I imagine that's not necessarily how it's all been behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's just such a weird day, transfer deadline day. Like literally wake up this morning and there is probably 3 players that we cannot guarantee will be here at 11 o'clock tonight. And we know that to some degree that's in our control. But equally, if numbers get to a certain level, it might not be within our control. And then such is football, but we've worked really, really hard over a period of time to get a player to come to us. We'd agreed everything yesterday. Would have been a loan with an option to buy, would have been a really exciting one for us as a club. Player in like absolute prime, really top player in League One he would have been. And then we got completely and utterly blown out of the water by a club who lost their other target, jumped on our deal at the last minute, literally. And the player rang me this morning to say he was on the way to that club to do a medical. So, yeah, I suppose I'm sitting here at 9:25 and we haven't lost any of our players. And I'll talk to you a bit about that in a minute, despite some offers today. So that's brilliant. And that is great credit to the board, because it's easy sometimes on deadline day to take what's offered. But I think it shows like their commitment to the club, because again, it's well documented, isn't it? How much the club loses year on year. And it's the easiest way for owners not to have to put that money in is if they reclaim that back by selling players. But equally, we've got valuations that we believe are right for the players, and the board to hold firm with that and allow Michael to have as much ammunition as possible to give ourselves something to chase in the second half of the season. We know that's a real tough assignment, and we know it's going to be tough to catch people above us, but we don't want to give that up with 16 games to go. We want our supporters to know we're still fighting and we're still trying to chase something. So the fact that the board have been that supportive today in terms of not just taking offers that came in, that's been really positive. So what a long-winded answer that was. Sorry, I'll try and do better in my future answers, but that was, how can I say, bit of frustration at the start of the day, like frustration close to devastation, to be honest. That's how it felt like, because when you do so much work and you think you've got someone who could make a real difference, it's a gutter. Then some relief that we come out of the window stronger than we went in it. We've got some of our players out playing football that will in the long term benefit the club. We've brought 2 really experienced guys in terms of Sam and James. We haven't lost anybody who was a part of the starting 11, if you like. And we've got a very talented young man in Joe. So when you assess it overall, probably go to bed tonight, could have been a lot worse. And especially in the landscape that we suddenly find ourselves in, because I don't know about you guys and what you've been talking about for the last couple of hours, but League One seemed pretty mad at the start of the season. We get the benchmarking. We see where we are, 19th in the budget table. We see we're 2 million off 10th. We see we're 3.5 million off playoff positions. And then in January, suddenly you see £1 million transfers between clubs. Then you see £1 million transfers between clubs in the same league. And then it finishes off with a £2 million transfer and double-digit wages in terms of like 10, 12, 15,000 pound a week to players in League One. So being honest, that isn't director of football trying to cover his backside and play the martyr. That's just genuine, pretty scared of where League One's going as a whole, because it seems to me like just no financial controls whatsoever. And what felt like us being underdogs and fighting against the odds has almost become, just a financial landscape that's getting further and further and further away from reality, any level of sustainability, and making it more and more difficult for clubs like ourselves. But that's the challenge, and we'll wake up tomorrow morning and we'll work really hard to try and get things ready in the summer that gives us a chance again. But yeah, today's probably been a bit of mixed emotions, to be honest.
You've pretty much answered at least the second question, because I was going to ask about the climate in the transfer market. I mean, it's obviously been very, very different this transfer window to any of the others in League One. Is it something that you see continuing, or things like the football governance, etc.? Is it going to be a one-off, do you feel?
I think we'll all be dead by the time football governance comes into place. Like, I've just given up. I've given up on the authorities, guys. To be honest, I've given up. I just feel frustrated that we're in a competition that seems to me has little or any financial controls. It may sound crazy to say that there is some element of financial control in the Championship when you're only, in inverted commas, allowed to lose 39 million over every 3-year cycle. But at least that does create some level of constraint, because you can't do anything you want to do. And there has to be some balancing transactions and some level of planning in terms of what you can sell and what you can buy. In the reality in League One, you can lose £100 million a year if you want to, if you've got owners with deep enough pockets who want to put that in. So, of course, no one will do that. But when you've got clubs losing the same level of money as their turnover, that's just ridiculous. And there's no constraint. There's no, from my perspective or what I see, there's no prospect of that changing very quickly. Of course, there's a little bit of change in terms of ownership not being able to put loans in, and ownership having to put equity in, and maybe even that you're only allowed to spend 60% of equity. But I think we'd all agree, like, wages have just spiraled out of control in League One. There was taking Birmingham out of the equation. There was still 58% inflation on wages in League One from the first half of this season to last season. So wages have gone up by 58% across the league, excluding Birmingham. And that isn't taking into account what's happened in January. So for Lincoln City to have been in the same budget position this year as we were last year, it would have cost us 68% of our budget just to stand still. You know, wow. Last season, 7 clubs had a budget of less than 3 million. This year, 1, and they're like 20 grand under 3 million. So the landscape is difficult. And I'm not saying that for sympathy. I'm not saying that for effect. I'm saying that because I genuinely care about this football club, and we have to somehow keep trying to find a way of competing. And I know what we all want, and the supporters want, and we want it as well. We want to play good football. We want to win games. We want to compete at the top end of this league. But even where we are now, and probably people are not ecstatic about where we are now, but it's still like a massive +7, +8 on our budget position. So just for context, it is getting more and more difficult, and we've got to keep true to our beliefs. And maybe there's a little bit of change in policy where we bring someone like James Collins, because we just feel like the group needed that at the top end of the pitch. And I'll talk about him in more detail, but we won't be able to win an arms race here. We can't. We're not we're not a little bit away. We're like double, treble, quadruple our budget away from teams in the top echelons of this league. So we're just going to have to, what's the word, review, think about the strategy again. But we've got to find a way of signing players that have the potential to be good League One footballers, but aren't in their peak years. Because if they're in their peak years, they're not going for a bit more now. They're going for double and treble. And we've got to get the balance. We've got to get the right experience. We've got to have a playing style that helps them. But yeah, it's been sobering, being honest, in January. And look, the reality, the player that I'm going to mention that we've done so much work on, and it would be unfair, of course, to name the player, and it'd be unfair, of course, to name the club he's gone to. But in the end, he was a player leaving a Championship club, and the League One club he's gone to can match his Championship wages. And we just can't do that. We just, even at our eyeballs out best offers, we're miles off that. So yeah, we've got a good group. We've got a really honest group. We've got a group definitely better than our position in the league for the budget. And we've added 2 really experienced players and really one very exciting young player. And we've got 15, 16 games to go out and keep fighting for the football club and doing our absolute best to finish as high as we can in the league and keep we want, in a good way, the season to be alive for as long as possible in trying to chase clubs above us. And, you know, despite the not best run, if you want, we're still only 5 points off sixth place. So the good thing about budgets, I suppose, and the good thing about wages is players might get paid double or treble what they were previously, but it doesn't make them twice or three times as good. And our players are pound for pound. I think we've got the best group in the league. I genuinely do, for what we pay. I think we've got really good, honest, hard-working players, and our job has been to try and add a couple of ingredients that the squad didn't have. We've definitely done that with Sam and James. Joe's exciting, and I hope that comes off, because that'd be great for us, for Forest, and for himself. But probably the headlines of the window are, up until 20 minutes ago when I sat on this chair, we hadn't lost anybody, and that's probably just as important.
That's what I was just going to ask quickly, because actually, since you came on, we've had at least 110 people additional join the stream. So just to clarify, as things are at the minute, you don't expect us to lose anybody in this window?
We haven't lost anybody yet.
Very good.
We've turned down 2 offers today for 2 different players.
Okay.
Two really serious offers as well. And that's great credit to the board, that they've backed the club, backed Michael, backed the fact that we want to keep fighting this season, and we don't want to signal to our supporters that the season's over. We know it's going to be hard to do what we want to do, but we want to keep chasing, and we want to keep fighting, and we want everybody to be with us. So great credit to the board that we have not sold our players anything other than the value that we would have for them. And I can't guarantee in the next 1.5 hours someone's not going to test us again with one of those 2 players. But we're doing our absolute best at this moment in time to make sure that no one leaves the football club unless it's absolutely at our value. And we want to make sure that people never see us as that, a club that you can come knocking in the last 10 minutes of a window and put a gun to our heads. And that comes from a relationship with the player, that comes from a relationship with the agent, that comes from good communication with both of those parties for a period of time. And then if clubs are speculative and try and do that, we're in a strong position because of the backing that we have from board. We might not be able to go and pay the wages others can, and probably don't want to be perfectly honest. And we certainly can't do the transfer fees that eye-watering, 2.5 million, stuff like that is just insane in this league. But what we have got is like so many genuine people here who care about the club, and therefore no one will leave our club without that being the right value.
Let's turn to the positives then, because as you say, we have come out of the transfer window relatively strong, signing 2 experienced players in Sam Lucas and James Collins. Do you want to talk to us about those 2 and the thought behind bringing those in?
Yeah, they're both different, even though they're both 34, and I'm aware that we're going to lose our model being an exception, aren't we, if we keep signing 34-year-olds. Sam's just a different one, isn't he? Like, you'd know him, I'm sure. I've got massive respect for Sam. I got to know him pretty well over the last 12 months. Met him a while back. I think I first started talking to him when he was at Stoke, and asked him if he thought this could ever be the final destination in his career. It was the first, or the start point, wasn't it? Even though I'm not sure Lincoln City gave him a great start in terms of releasing him twice by the age of 18. Helped with his resilience to get to where he got to. But Sam wanted to come back to Lincoln. He wanted to finish his career here. He's had an unbelievable career to play in the Premier League. Like, his quality, his experience, his knowledge, is first class. He's a really good guy. He's got a genuine affinity for the city and the football club. Had a similar one of these once upon a time at my previous club with a guy called Luke Chadwick, who everybody would know probably, who had left Cambridge at age of 14 to go to Man United, had played in massive games, won leagues, played in Champions League, quarterfinals, but wanted to finish where he thought it should have started. And Sam was very, very similar. So good guy, great experience, top player, real quality, trained for the last couple of weeks. Can't guarantee you when he's going to start, when he's going to play, but he's ready to. There's no injury, there's no problem. It's just that he's had 8 games in the National League, and it's not quite maybe the intensity of what League One looks like. But yeah, I think Sam will show his value over the next 3 months, and hopefully, if things go well, even beyond, because I'm sure he's got a role to play at this football club, even beyond playing potentially. James is a different one, isn't it? Like, if I had £1 for everyone who says we need a proven centre forward who scores goals, I'd be rich and probably wouldn't have to have this stress of working. Like, I don't know that, of course. Like, I would love to turn down loads of really proven centre forwards with a goal scoring record. Like, we always want to look for those. There was an opportunity with James that came about. We know his agent. He had a couple of other offers that were going to be potential loans. And look, we probably, I don't know what the phrase is. I probably shouldn't say it, although it's after the watershed, but we were a little bit balls out and we said, no, let's do this on an 18 months. And we were really front foot and really positive with James. And in doing that, we secured him because he wanted to be part of something. And he I think it's difficult, when you get to the age of 34, 35 as a player he's played 700 games, he scored 200 goals, he's had 6 promotions. People start talking about, you'll add a lot to the group, you'll be really good for them off the pitch. He wants to contribute on the pitch. He trained every single day for Derby this season. He was available for every single fixture. So it's not like he sees himself as winding down. He sees himself with so much more to offer. And that resonated with us. So, of course, he's going to be a help for Fred, for Jovan, for Bailey, for Rob, for the younger strikers. Of course, he's going to be a help for the group because he's a really experienced centre forward with presence and like a nous and a knowledge to be able to score goals. But the other thing he's going to do for us is he's going to actually do the business on the pitch, we hope. So, I think that was a really positive, bold statement from the club to do that early in the window when we really wanted to add some experience and know-how and proven goal-scoring ability to help alleviate some of the pressure from some of those young shoulders where it's hard to bear that pressure when the team's going through spells of not scoring.
Can I ask about Joe Gardner, obviously coming in on loan from Forest, a player that had a little bit of a rumour coming to us beforehand, but seems like he's a quite an exciting young player that's coming in. Was there maybe a half an eye on, is somebody potentially, could there be offers coming in for somebody that could potentially go, or is this a genuine sort of, we'll develop him and hopefully do what we've done for other players in the past and he can add a lot to the club as well?
Yeah, so these interviews always become me thinking I'm just talking to you two guys. So then I'm really open and then I forget there's 200 people listening or however many more when you put it on different channels later.
Well, somebody did make the point that if we keep you on, then it just means that you won't be able to answer your phone. So if you want to stick around until 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I think they might have Liam's number as well. Joe's a good one for us. I'll tell you exactly what's happened with Joe, so you can see what happens sometimes in football. I first saw Joe play, not that it's about me, because Mark Tracy goes and watches loads of these games, but he first came to my attention, Joe. Forest played 2 under-21 games in the space of a couple of weeks at Meadow Lane at the start of the season before last, so August 23. And I watched the first game, it was against Middlesbrough. Young kid come on with about half an hour to go, quite liked him. And then 2 weeks later, they played Arsenal and this kid started. And I really, really liked him. And he played about 70 minutes. And that was Joe. So I registered that with Ginge at the time. And we tracked him and kept an eye on him. And Mark would have watched him on a number of occasions. We're aware of, obviously, we've got a pretty open relationship with Nottingham Forest, even though personnel have changed a little bit from when Brennan was here with Gary Brazil. It's now Ross Wilson and Craig Mulholland and Chris Brass and Chris McGuane and Andy Reid. So there's a few guys there that were in constant dialogue about potential players. The biggest thing that happened for us was Jack Moylan's injury. So that was the catalyst really to go from admiring Joe, actually probably thinking that'll be really interesting to see where he goes on his first loan. And we thought that might be League Two. There's some well-documented stuff in the press about clubs that were chasing him. We know we spoke to another couple of clubs. But once we knew the severity of Jack's injury that we feared on the moment it happened, really, and we knew he'd be out for the season, I spoke to then Joe's agent literally on that Sunday and Monday, explained that our interest has gone from admiring him to actually being really interested in bringing him on loan. We just think he's that little bit of an X-factor type player, can beat someone in a 1v1 in the middle of the pitch, can play as an 8, can play as a 10, has played as a little bit of like a false 9 for Forest when they played in the EFL trophy games. He did really, really well away to Carlisle. We watched all of those games. And then it was just a matter of, for me, being really, really dead honest with Nottingham Forest, because if their expectations was Joe was going to play every game and start every game, we wouldn't have done this. It wouldn't have been fair for anybody. We're really open and clear. We told them the system. We told them where we saw Joe playing. maybe initially that might be more off the bench in terms of trying to chase a game. If we were trying to get a win from a drawing position or come back in a game. They were happy that we'd been so transparent and so honest. We got the opportunity to present to Joe, to his agent, and to the under-21s coach at Forest. We did that on the day of the Blackpool game. He stayed up in the afternoon, stayed for the game, took him in the boardroom, looked after him and his agent. He watched us play. And then the next day, Joe said that he was really keen to come, and Forest were really keen that we were going to provide him with a really good environment. They obviously know Chrissy Cohen as well, Forest, so that's a nice link for us there. The proximity from his home, he lives in Burton Joyce, so that's not too far. But just maybe the environment we would create and the opportunities that he would get, albeit they knew that there was no guarantees for extensive playing time, but definitely an opportunity to earn that playing time, and everybody was happy. So it made sense for all three parties.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Quick question from me about Dylan Duffy. Obviously, Dylan went on loan, then very quickly went on a permanent deal. What's the kind of the thinking behind that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's a bit rare, this. So first of all, look, we have a responsibility to our players sometimes to try and find them football if we can't do that here. And that's not criticising anybody, but you look at the minutes. Dylan's played 268 minutes this season, 900 minutes last season. He's been here 2 years now. Does this system of play 3-5-2 exactly suit him? Maybe not. But we hope that he could develop the defensive part of his game, because actually his attacking attributes massively suit this system of play, because he's quick, he's strong, he's powerful, he's direct, and he's got a wonderful left foot to cross the ball on the run. So the attacking part of this formation does suit him. Can he learn, and could he get better at some of that defensive side of the game that would make him what we would have thought like a perfect all-round wing-back? The answer has probably been no, being honest. And then we looked in this transfer window as potential options for loan. There was an earlier one that went away, and then Chesterfield came in really strongly. But at the time of coming in, they really wanted it to be a permanent, and we weren't so keen on that. Initially, we thought maybe a loan would be better for Dylan to come back. Then we investigated a little bit of what a buyback option might look like for us in the summer. So maybe he would go, and maybe we'd have a couple of windows where we would have an opportunity to do that. However, Chesterfield were very, very keen to do it on a permanent and put a very, very good contract in front of Dylan. So that would have been a better contract than he had it here at this club. And then when you look at everything, and we got to the deal that we got to, which I can't put numbers on it because that isn't fair. And unfortunately, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, well, now nothing's disclosed. If we start disclosing one, there'd be no context to any disclosure. But it was like a very significant transfer fee for a player who hadn't been able to play football for us over a 2-year period, with a very, very sizable sell-on and the opportunity for us to match offers if clubs tried to buy him for a period of time. So when we took all of those things into account, we actually thought, do you know what, being right for Dylan is let him go and spread his wings and go and play for a team. I think Cookie will play in a way that's 4-2-3-1. Dylan will play high and wide. He joked with me, it was a bit like back to UCD days when he'd wait for the ball and they'd get it to him and he could run and cross it. And he said he got a bollocking for chasing back too much the other night. So I think he'll enjoy that. I think that'll bring the best out of him. And sometimes we have a responsibility, just what's the right thing for the player long term. And if the right thing for the player happens, mostly that culminates in also being the right thing for the football club. So yeah, that was the thinking. We're massively protected. We're well remunerated at the start, and Dylan gets a chance probably to go to a club where he'll play in his optimal position. He gets the best chance to showcase his talents, and then Lincoln either get a very, very, very sizable slice of what comes next if he's sold, or the opportunity to buy him back at a very discounted rate if we think that he's got a future here in a period of time. So yeah, we covered most bases, I think, with that deal, and that's why in the end the deal made sense for us.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we've got Charlie with a question, so I'll drop Ben out now and bring Charlie in. Charlie, you have a question for Jez? I'm aware we're getting close to the time as well, Jez, so yeah, apologies for that.
That's all right. I'll check my phone.
Please don't.
Yeah, put it away.
Evening, Jez. So we were just talking there, obviously, about Dylan Duffy starting out as a loan move, and obviously he wasn't the only person that we did loan out. Now, Rob Street and JJ McKiernan. At the start of the window, was it that we were actively looking for a loan out for those two? Or was the kind of the offer of play time from the likes of Doncaster and obviously Burton just a little bit too good to kind of turn down once those came in?
Yeah, good question. We wanted an opportunity for them to play football. We think they're two talented young men. JJ probably gave us glimpses of what he's capable of, like he started the season in the team. If you remember back in August, Ethan Hamilton wasn't fit, Conor McGrandles wasn't fit. And yeah, we started the season, I think, first game away with Tom Bayliss and JJ as the 2/8s. So we think JJ's a really talented young boy, hasn't probably hit the ground running as well as he hoped or we hoped. And then his game time became more and more sporadic and more limited. He gave a bit of a showcase against Man City 21s as to what he can do. Obviously, that's a different type of game, but showed at least the talent as to why we brought him to the club in the first place. It's documented that he's on a long-term contract with us. So for JJ, we thought we were really, really keen for JJ to come play in League One. So if we hadn't found a League One loan for him, we would have waited for that opportunity. So the fact that Burton came in, we know Gary Bowyer, good guy, good manager, massive second half of the season for them with lots to fight for. We thought it'd be a really good loan for JJ. And he's never played in League One until this season. Like, people judge him so early, but he's had one season in the National League. He's had 28 games in League Two. And we sign him early because if we don't and we wait for him to go and have 50, 60, 80 games in League Two, in League One, he goes beyond us. So sometimes we have to back a judgment and make early decisions in careers and get them at the early part of their development curve. So I think 20 games in League One will teach us a lot about JJ, and he'll come back far, far better for that experience. With Rob, he's moved up to Lincoln. He's made a home up here. Doncaster's really close. They contacted us at the back end of December. We know Grant is a good guy. We know they're at the top end of the league fighting for promotion. The way they play like a little bit of like the Liverpool with Bobby Firmino as the false nine and the two wide strikers making out to win runs. So Ironside or Billy Sharp will be the 9, and then they play with Molyneux one side, and the idea was Rob would play the other side. So when we look at his strengths, running in behind, his pace, his ability to run off the back of the top line, we thought it'd be a good fit. And yeah, we just wanted him to play football. Like, we haven't managed to get him enough minutes. That's the truth. There's been a lot of competition at the top end of the pitch. Everybody will have their own ideas of who should and who shouldn't be selected, but Rob just desperately needed a run of games and a big amount of football. And I spoke to him yesterday. It was brilliant. He scored a really, really good goal Saturday. I don't know if any of you have seen it. Proper finish, great run, good first touch, really drilled finish. I love the celebration. And for him, when he's such a good lad who works so hard every day, if you speak to Michael, any of the coaching staff, that lad's attitude on a day-to-day basis, even without football at the weekend with us all season, has been exemplary. So it was a brilliant moment for him to score. And he just said to me on the phone yesterday that getting the loan sorted so early rather than going into today worrying about it and meant he's been, up and running from the start of the month. They've got loads to play for. They've got a game on Thursday that I'll go and watch. They've got a big cup game against Palace, which is the team that he left and he came through as a young player. So it'll be, again, really beneficial for him. So we're pleased with both of those loans. I think it tells you a little bit about our squad now that our young players can go and get loans in top League Two clubs or clubs in League One and be playing and contributing.
Brilliant. Have we got time for one last question, Jez? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
Charlie, have you got one last question?
I have just a quick one on Paul O'Connor. He's obviously reportedly been involved in a bid over the last week or two. May still be interested in there. Obviously, who knows on that one. His contract running out in the summer. A lot of people are drawing parallels between him and Regan Poole in terms of the potentially waiting to hold on. And God forbid, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but then lose on a free. If we did, would you be happy with having that value of him on the pitch for that last 6 months? Again, touch wood, it doesn't happen if he were to leave on a free.
So firstly, I'm happy with the value we get every single 90 minutes from Porty. Like, he is an incredible guy. I'm going to go over time now just talking about Porty because the respect I would have for him, the coaches would have, the club would have, would be unlimited. Like, he literally, I'll give you an example. Chesham away, get to the hotel at lunchtime. He's ill. He's whiter than your shirts, guys, and literally spends the afternoon in bed, doses himself up, gets on the pitch heads and kicks the ball for us for an hour and a half and then collapses again afterwards. He's had injuries. Like literally, if it doesn't fall off and it's only hanging off, he still gets himself on the pitch and plays. And you could argue in the last year of a contract, when he's aware of speculation, it would be really, really easy for him to pull himself out of 1 or 2 games. There's games he's played in this year, let me tell you, that I don't know if many players would have played. That's the level of his like physical commitment to this football club. And then when you look at what he actually has done as a defender over the last 2.5 years, where he started to where he's ended, or where he is now, sorry, ended is the wrong word. I think he's developed massively. He wins every first contact pretty much. He defends our box. If you look at the data for aerial dominance, he's right at the top. He'd be just one of the top defenders in this league. So let's remember how we got him. So we signed him because he ran down his contract at Bradford City so that he could leave on a free transfer and then he could maximise his contract and pick the right club for himself. We have done and are continuing to do everything in our power to try and persuade Pordy that his future could be at Lincoln City beyond this summer. And we're in dialogue with him. And that's a really respectful process that will continue in private. You'd expect us to be in that process. But he just leads our football club as captain on and off the pitch. In my opinion, if I was a supporter of this club, exactly how I'd want a captain to represent my football club. He's intelligent, he's articulate, he's brave, he's honest, and he's really skilled at his job. And we'd love to keep him, but equally, we all have to be cognizant of what the wages look like in League One at this moment in time. And you have to respect that he's 27 years old. The next contract is really big for him, and he has to do the right thing for him and his family. And that doesn't take away any of his commitment for Lincoln City, any of his love for Lincoln City, but it's his profession. He's got a short profession, and the competition and the level of wages in this league at the minute probably makes it 2-3 times as hard to secure players like Pordy as it even did with Regan previously. So long-winded answer, but I think it's really important on record that I talk about his commitment because it's unparalleled to what I've seen. He's first class on and off the pitch, leads the group on and off the pitch, and we'd love him to do that beyond the summer. But we know with Pordy that he'll give blood, he'll sweat, do everything for Lincoln City Football Club until the last minute of his last game. We hope that isn't this season. We hope it's beyond. But I know in answer to your question, we'll get more than value for him in the next 6 months. And let me say this, from the transfer fee we were offered, we will get more in-use value for Pordy than ever cashing in on him in this transfer window. Because take him out of our team for the next 16 games, I don't think we have as good a chance of achieving anything that we want to, or having a chance of achieving anything we want to. So, yeah, we would we'll fight to keep him. And, yeah, we've kept him beyond January. So we can fight to live another day.
Brilliant. Well, that's our time, Jez. So we'll let you go and turn your phone off and hide in a toilet. Take Liam's phone with you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming on and giving us some insight as well. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate you doing the show as always as well. Thanks, guys. Good job.
No worries. Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Bye.
I'm hoping. There we go. So let's invite Ben and Chris back in now. Myself and Charlie are going to disappear for a bit and let Ben and Chris pick the bones out of some of that interview, and then I'm happy to drop back in once I've been for a week because that cup of tea's gone straight through me.
Well, there we go. So yeah, I mean that was enlightening, wasn't it, Chris?
Yeah, incredibly enlightening and very interesting, as it always is. Like, I just think as supporters, we always need to be really thankful that we have the amount of openness that we have from the people that run our football club, because, you know, whether you agree or disagree with things that you said, or, you know, we all have our own opinions. I think you just don't get this access as football fans. We don't have this kind of transparency. And I think his answers were really, to be honest, some were quite sobering. Some were quite disappointing in regards to just the landscape of League One at the moment, just how much it's changed, not just in the last few years, but just since this summer. I think it's absolutely incredible what's been going on in League One financially. And of course, we had the finances come out last week, and that creates its own headlines. And yeah, it shows that how tough it is to balance those two aspects, isn't it? We mentioned how much we want to keep Pordy, but I think you and I would probably both agree that we'd respect him if he did choose to leave in the summer. Also respect the fact that the club is doing everything they can to keep him. I think whatever happens will happen. But, you know, on the one hand, you think, well, just offer him what he wants. Let's keep him because he's that good. But at the same time, the club lost £3 million last year, and we can't do that forever. So there has to be a middle ground somewhere where we have to be sensible, and we have to just be honest with ourselves as to where we are as a football club and the landscape that we're kind of operating in. So I think I don't want this to be too negative, but it was sobering to but it's also really helpful, I think, to hear it firsthand, because we only speculate as fans. We don't really know. So to get a glimpse into the reality is really useful.
It is. And I mean, so there was a comment that really caught my eye here from Lisa. She said, after attending Wigan on Saturday, was fuming leaving the ground, listening to Jez is sobering, we're punching above our weight. And that's the thing. It's like, it's very easy to get annoyed and angry and frustrated coming away from the match because we've not played particularly well or anything along those, those lines. It's so difficult because, again, looking through, we do see all the comments that are coming in at the moment, and that there are obviously comments from people who, would not necessarily be people that Gaz would be following on Twitter for all that long, to be fair, or another way of putting it. But when people say, "Oh, get all the players tied down on massive contracts," it's like, where is the money going to come from to do that? It's like if somebody says, "Oh, get Pordy tied down on a massive contract," if you have one player that suddenly breaks our wage structure, then that will mean that everybody else in the team will go, "Well, he's getting that. Why can't I get that?" And then, "Oh, right, well, you can have that as well." And then, "Well, they're getting that. Why can't I have that?"
Yeah. I remember Michael Appleton mentioned this a few years ago when you and Gaz did an interview with him. And it was about Tom Hopper at the time, I seem to remember. And I think Tom was out of contract or he was performing really well. And Michael said, if Tom, for example, this isn't picking on Tom, it was just an example I think that Michael used in his interview, said, if Tom's going to come to me and ask him for a pay rise of X amount, then everyone else that's having a good season is going to come knock on my door and ask for a pay rise as well, and are also going to probably be justified in doing so. I don't envy the guys. It's incredibly difficult. And I think it's made more difficult as well in terms of us competing in League One, in that we mentioned earlier when we were talking about transfers that there are not that many Championship clubs that are shopping in League One. There's a few, but there's not probably not as many as there have been. So who do we sell our best players to? Because we have to sell players. We're going to have to sell them currently to really ambitious League One sides. Teams like Huddersfield, teams like Wrexham, teams like Birmingham, teams like Wickham, as they are at the moment, that are splashing the cash on players at this level, which is good from a financial perspective, but obviously you're strengthening a rival then. So it's incredibly difficult to navigate. But I do feel that we've got the right people at the club that have its best interests at heart. I think you can, for anyone who listened to the whole duration of Jez's interview there, can see quite how passionate he is and how much this football club means to him. And he seemed pretty distraught, didn't he, when he first came on? He did perk up afterwards when talking about some of the positives. Yeah. But when he first came on, he seemed a little bit down because he, for want of a better phrase, the guy gives a shit, just like we do. And to be honest, my overriding reaction, to be honest, as much as we are normally the positive one, my overriding reaction to that is not disappointment, just despondency, probably, in that just the reality of where we are, and we have to respect it. So we all want to get to the Championship as football fans, and I think the people at the club do. But that task, so just for me, just to have the context that we've got now, that task just feels so much more difficult for a club of our size without a billionaire backer than it did even a year ago, let alone 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is humbling. It's sobering. Looking at, people saying, "Oh, well, I don't," this excuse that other clubs have got loads of money is getting stale. It's like, it's not an excuse. Like, if you want to turn round and say, "Oh, I want a Ferrari." Okay, cool. Well, that's going to cost you 500, 120 grand or whatever it's going to be for a brand new car. No, you're going to have to make do with your Fiesta for a bit. We cannot play in the same field as those teams with all of that money unless somebody comes in and dumps a ton of money into the club without wanting it back, instantly. I mean, to be honest, that stat about wages going up by, what was it, 68% or 58%? Is
58%, yeah. Without Birmingham. Birmingham.
That's absolutely staggering. But I mean, let's look at some positives a little bit, and we'll bring Gaz in a little bit as well for this, because I think the positives really are around the players that we've brought in and the conversations that we've had around those players that have come in. I was particularly interested to hear, the way that the Joe Gardner's loans come about. Obviously, we suspected it was kind of in reaction to Jack Moylan's injury. That's been essentially confirmed to say, yes, we did, because we knew it was going to be serious. But it feels a bit like those long-term routes that were put down with Brennan Johnson coming in. They are still there. Obviously, there's different staff there now. But it bodes well for not just now, but for the future as well, doesn't it?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was miles away from it there. Yeah, it does. Look, I mean, the thing is that the way that he spotted Joe Gardner, I wouldn't think that that's particularly unusual in the way that we spot any players. I remember talking to Mark Kennedy many moons ago about Tashan Oakley-Booth and how he had spotted him playing in an under-21 game. So I don't think that's particularly unusual. Obviously, it's a reactionary signing to a degree with Jack Moylan's injury, but it's interesting that he obviously had offers from other League Two clubs, as we know that's Walsall and Bradford were both interested as well. So, and also he tended to alluded rather to it not being guaranteed playing time. Now, that was something that when he first signed, people were saying they've had to have a guaranteed playing time. We've had to say we're going to play him. How have we got that happening? Obviously, that isn't the case as well. So it's another one of those rumours that kind of builds up and actually is entirely false. So I thought they were really, really interesting comments. And while I was away, were you guys talking about Pordy at all? Have you kind of covered that?
Yes.
Briefly,
well, sort of, yeah. We essentially said that, you can't force somebody to sign a contract unless you give them double what they're currently on. And it sounds like that may be what Pordy can get. It sounded to me like it is going to be one of those instances where we will probably be saying goodbye to Pordy O'Connor in the summer, barring a bit of a miracle. But the value, as Jez said, and as we've said on the podcast previously, the value on the pitch between now and the end of the season, if we can turn it around and potentially, get into the playoffs and potentially maybe get to the championship. Who knows? It's going to be a big ask.
Yeah. I hope not. I've got festival tickets for the first playoff weekend.
Yeah. But, that is one of those instances. And to me, the only thing that could potentially satisfy some people on this one is if we end up doing what we did with George Grant, where he'll sign a new contract with the clause that essentially either, if we don't go up and a championship club comes in for him, he will go to them. But, I don't know the ins and outs of how it all works. It was just one of those where it's a precedent from history and you think, well, that'd probably work again, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think that'd be quite unlikely personally. In terms of just how transfers generally work now. If you're a championship, let's say it's a championship club, it might be another League One club that's able to offer triple what we're paying him at the moment. If we have that deal with Pordy, let's say, okay, you can leave if to a championship club if we don't get to the championship. Then a championship club they'll have an overall amount of money that they're willing to pay combined for wages plus transfer fee. If they've got to pay a transfer fee to sign him then because he signed a new deal with us, then they're not going to be able to offer him the wages that they would have budgeted for without the transfer fee. And if you're a player that is choosing whether to sign a contract or not at your current club, and you've got a club lined up that you've got one option, which is sign a new deal here so you can get a transfer fee and have a lower wage, or you go and get a much higher wage without the hassle. it's this is just business, isn't it? At the end of the day, and it was really nice to hear Jez, be so positive around Pordy's character, and I think it's worth bearing in mind that we don't know what the fee that was offered for Pordy, and I think just from a fan's perspective, I think the reality is hit home tonight. But I think there's also something else that was maybe underlined there that maybe was missed a little bit, is that we know it's going to be hard work, but the people that run our football club want to give the rest of this season a bloody good go. We want to do everything we can to try and sneak into the playoffs. Don't expect it to be easy, but they're ambitious and they want to be able to do that. They don't want the season just to fizzle out. They want to be ambitious and to try and give Michael and the team every possible tool that they can to allow us to have at least a shot of getting there. Pordy O'Connor in the team absolutely gives us a better opportunity than Pordy O'Connor not in the team. So unless the finances involved are significant, where you can't turn it down, then it was nice to hear that in saying that we're not going to sell him for pittance. We understand that you weigh up the immediate value and the long-term value financially, and if the value on the pitch outweighs the value financially, then it makes sense. I think it's a bit different to Regan Poole, because Regan Poole was much younger at the time, and maybe the situation around having something to play for towards the end of the season from an offensive perspective maybe was different. But I think it's just from a positive point of view, it's nice to hear that the people that run our football club want to give it a real go this season and still be really positive, despite the challenges that we're facing. Football isn't played on the bank sheet, is it? As much as that impacts it, it's not played there. It's played on the football pitch, and we've got a decent squad. And if things click, then we have half a chance. And I like the fact that the club are giving us that half a chance, and the board are giving us half a chance by allowing Pordy and others, it sounds like, to stay for this next third of the season or so.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear Jez reiterate the point as well, that essentially that's how we got Pordy O'Connor. He ran his contract down at Bradford, and then he came to us on a free. So it's like it's not unexpected. It's not it's not unprecedented, but it would still hurt. It'd still be disappointing. But ultimately, I think it's clear that Pordy's going to give it his all until he goes. But let's have some speculation then, some rampant and random speculation. Who was the player we missed out on?
Oh, I don't know. There was a few things in our group chat and in the green room, wasn't there? I again don't know. But my expectation, I've forgotten the bloody guy's name now. The Middlesbrough, Alex Gilbert, that went from Middlesbrough to Charlton on loan. He's the one that just seems to fit our model and also fits the explanation of moving from Championship to League One.
What about Owen Dale?
Someone's just said Owen Dale.
He's just moved from Oxford to Wigan on loan.
That would make sense. Don't know where he would fit in our current system, but that doesn't mean to say that he wouldn't.
Should we bring Charlie in? He's sat there patiently, Bessim. Here he is.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. So what did you think to that then, Charlie? Was there anything in particular that you were interested in, or any concerns?
Well, I'll obviously always praise any interview we get to have with Jez purely because of how open he is. We know that, beating the same drum with it. It's incredible the amount of insight that he's willing to give on transfer deadline day in the evening. Yes, it is, and I'm more than happy for that.
Channel? Yeah, well, of course, don't you know? If we don't, we will lose our access. We will lose everything, because that's all we do it for, obviously.
I was very intrigued by the conversation around Rob Street and JJ McKinnon. Again, it was pretty clear from what Jez was saying that this was very much a pre-planned move going into this window, that we were going to be allowing them time to kind of move on for another club in terms of a loan move to get that playing time. And again, it's exactly what me and Gaz were talking about earlier on. We're clearly seeing their long-term development is more important than having them as available options in the next 6 months. So I was really kind of intrigued by the conversations regarding that, and obviously the stuff around Joe Gardner as well. The fact that the Jack Moylan situation effectively put the nail in the coffin that we were going to be going for Joe Gardner rather than just admiring. Because I guarantee from what he was saying that if this was, let's say, 6 months ago, or if Jack Moylan hadn't got injured, we might have been sat here on deadline day talking about Joe Gardner as one of those players that we often talk about of we will go for on deadline day if the opportunity arises, if sort of moving parts start to fit, that he becomes available for, you know, a good deal or whatever. But instead, we kind of snapped it up early. And by the sounds of it, it happened really, really quickly, which again shows the faith that Nottingham Forest put in us as the football club.
Yeah, very good. Anything else that popped out from either of you guys? Chris, anything else that popped out from the Jez interview that you wanted to pick up on?
No, nothing that we've not said really. I'm thinking we can probably move on from that.
Yeah, fair enough. So what we were going to do was a quick 6 monthly review right now. But before we do, Charlie, Chris, Ben, even Jesus Christ, I'm getting like me nan when she used to go through all of the cousins before she got to me. Darren, Mark, Dean, Gary. Ben, do you have an update for us? Let's trim these two out first of all. There we go.
Alex Palmer has officially moved from West Brom to Ipswich. So talk earlier is now all galvanised and correct. Let's have a look at the rest of this here. Sam Cosgrove has gone from Barnsley to Stockport on loan. Tom McIntyre has gone from Portsmouth to Charlton on loan. Ben Perry has gone from Nottingham Forest to Northampton on loan. Clement Rodriguez has gone from SC Bastia to Barnsley on loan. And I think that's the majority. Owen Dale, obviously, Oxford to Wigan. That one's there. Lee Myung-jae has gone from being a free agent and gone to Birmingham. Will Norris has gone from Portsmouth to Wickham. And I think, did I say Kyle Edwards, Oxford Stevenage in the last update we had?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So that takes us up to that one. So
wonderful.
Yeah, some good transfers there, interesting ones.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ben.
So
right. So what we did plan to do was a 6 month review. We were going to do it at the beginning of the show, but Chris wasn't available. We're going to do it in the middle of the show, but we got Jez George. So we'll bring Chris and Charlie in for what will be 20-25 minutes, looking back over the last 6 months. And then we will look to wrap up the show heading towards 11 o'clock. So we will bring Chris and Charlie back in. I will go.
And there we go.
That was pretty blunt, wasn't it, the way he jumped out there? So yeah, Chris, we last season we did a monthly review show at the end of each month, funnily enough, because that's when you do monthly review shows, isn't it? But we haven't quite had the time to commit to doing it fully this season in terms of at the end of every month, have we? However, we definitely want to try and get something in looking back at the first kind of half of the season. So now is probably the perfect opportunity to very much be doing that. Now, first of all, Chris, taking it back to the start of the season, where did you think we would be by this stage of the campaign? And are there any kind of key surprises, whether that be transfers, whether that be tactics, whether that simply be position on the table that has jumped out at you?
Yes and no, I suppose, in regards to, did I expect us to be where we are? Yes, in regard to like current league position, I thought we would be within touching distance of the playoffs, but not quite there. And that is kind of where we are. I think how we've got there is a little bit surprising. Personally, and I think we mentioned this in pre-season, I expected us to have a positive start to the season. I felt we got a lot of our transfer dealings done early. We were obviously off the back of a really positive end of last season. That just positive morale probably helps in starting that. I also think our fixture list was probably relatively favourable early in the season. Every club has a blip. I wasn't expecting ours to be quite as long as it was. I maintained this throughout the time that we weren't picking up points, that I actually didn't think we were a million miles away. However, we were not getting the results that maybe our performances justified yet. Off the back of that, performances did then start to slip. So I think in the first few games of that little run, you can kind of feel unlucky. I think the Wrexham game particularly jumps out to me there. Like we deserve not only to not lose that game, we deserve to win that game of football. And sometimes you can look back on games and think, that was unfortunate, but we played all right. There's nothing to worry about. And then there was a couple of games, later in the run where you're thinking, hang on a minute, we're on a bit of a tough situation here. Particularly the Rotherham game was a real low point. But since then, I think we've started to see the tide turning, and I think it's baffling, really, isn't it, that we are. And again, with the added context of the finances, that we are still somehow only 5 points away from the playoffs, albeit 6 teams between us and the playoff places themselves that we have to overtake, off the back of actually a pretty poor points haul for the last month or two. But in terms of, did I expect us to be within reaching distance of the playoffs at this stage of the season? Yeah, I did. I didn't expect us to be in there, and I don't expect us to end the season in the playoffs. I probably expect us to finish now, in all honesty. What about you?
Yeah, I predicted just before the season started that we would end September in the playoffs, and I think we just about did. I think we were in 5th or 6th as the clock struck October, and I was quite proud of that because I'm like, all right, that's my prediction. That's my first prediction out of the way, and then it was obviously just going to be about how can we kind of maintain that? Can we stay in that? Inevitably, we were always going to drop out at some point. The exact same as you. Definitely didn't expect the blip to be quite as long as it did. Probably did expect it to be around the same time of year because it just seems like that's a yearly occurrence now. It's just the way that it is, kind of going over that Christmas period. But again, I still think that we've shown a little bit in January to kind of fight back from that. I agree with you, especially after the kind of real dark point of the Rotherham game. That was probably that big kind of kick in the teeth of, look, we're bad at the moment and we definitely need to be making some changes. And I think we've started to do that. The Northampton game, again, I think we played really well. We got the result from that. The Peterborough game, of course, people will sit there and say, look, it's a one-off. Peterborough were really bad. 100% they were. But we were also really good. We fully deserved to have a good result and hope that we could kind of build off the back of that. I thought, obviously, against Blackpool, although we didn't with the result, we did with the performance. It was just a real shame that we couldn't get something out of that game. And then I didn't really think we were great in the Wigan match. But it's now how we can build on that. Going into February, you don't have things like transfers to be worrying about. You don't have cup competitions on Tuesday nights to be worrying about anymore. It is purely a run into the end of the season. And that's where I'm hoping that we can kind of thrive a little bit like we did at the back end of last season as well. So I'm with you, not too surprised with where we are now, but maybe a little surprised in the manner of how we got here.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, that we both feel the same in that regard. I know we do agree on a lot of things, but I think that was a bit of a surprise to me. Shall we have a look? Because that's how we feel, but shall we have a look at what the statistics suggest that maybe what we should be doing? I think it's always interesting, particularly at this kind of halfway point in the season or just past halfway, where we want to have a look at, well, what are we doing well? What do we need to improve upon? But we all have our own opinion because we watch Lincoln City every week. But we don't watch 90 minutes of Wigan Athletic or Wycombe Wanderers or Birmingham City. We just see highlights. So I think it's always interesting to not just compare ourselves to how we would like to be in an ideal world, but actually how do we compare to everyone else in League One, because they're all playing at the same standard. So I've gone through a few bits and bobs here that I've tried to keep it brief, but what I'll do, I'll go through some bits and bobs and then just get your opinion, if that sounds like a plan.
Works for me. Cool.
So we'll do something that's off the pitch to start with, though. Our average attendance this season currently averages at 9,044. Just a smidge higher than our average attendance the season that we won League Two, which would actually make it, if it ends at its current point, our highest average attendance since 1960. So that's a good thing.
How much of that do you think is situational because of the teams that we're now facing in League One compared to the teams that we have maybe been facing in recent years? I say that, granted, we've had the likes of Derby and Sheffield Wednesday and Sunderland and all of these. But do you think that does reflect in it at all?
Good question. I looked into this a few weeks ago, so I don't know the last handful of games. But we have had more teams with bigger away followings this season. But I've also worked out, or did a couple of weeks ago, that the average number of home supporters has increased by between 400 and 500 off the back of last season. So that's a real positive sign. So, whenever we mentioned the financial challenges that we're facing in League One, the fact that we're getting bums on the seats and people are supporting their local football club is really, really good. And we are, I think, top of the league in regard to the percentage of the city that watches their football club at the weekend. Yeah. And that's great. So that shows, as a fan base, we have some real I suppose, positives there. So that's off the pitch. Now, obviously, we're 12th place on the pitch. In terms of points per game, that would actually put us 14th in the league. Now, one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet at any point this evening, which of course has to be mentioned at some point, is expected goals. So XG, obviously it doesn't tell us everything. It is a snapshot. I always say at work, I'm a weight management practitioner at work, so I always say that number on the scales doesn't tell you how healthy you are. That number on the scales doesn't dictate even how much fat's on your body. It just tells you how much everything is, but it gives you a small indication, just a snapshot of how things are going. And that's kind of what XG is like. It doesn't give us the whole impact. But I think if anyone wants to feel aggrieved, we can call this the justice table. We're actually 6th in the XG table. I don't think that is an accurate representation of our actual strength, but I think it shows that we have the potential that we could probably push a little bit higher than where we are now. Thanks, Gaz, for that, by the way. Yeah, that's kind of the overall stuff. So what are we doing well, Charlie? Well, we're defending pretty well. We're 2nd in the league for interceptions per 90, 8th in the league for defensive duels, 1. We are 8th in the league as well for possession won in the final third. So I think in terms of those defensive metrics, we're pretty good. Our PPDA, so that's our passes allowed per defensive action. So that's basically how intense you press. We're 6th in the league for that. Now, last season, under Mark Kennedy, we were dead last with that, hovering around the 20 mark. So I think in regards to our style, in trying to just be more aggressive, front foot, win the ball back high up the pitch, doesn't always work. But I think just in terms of our approach, that just goes to show that at least we're trying to play on the front foot, whether it looks like it or not. It shows that we've been pretty successful in that kind of high press more often than not. So yeah, defensively, there's not really a hole other than we have committed the 2nd highest amount of fouls in League One this season. So what are your thoughts on those so far?
It's interesting, actually, because I think there's been a lot of talk about our defensive solidity and the fact that last season, no matter what was going on at the top end of the pitch, we were always really strong defensively. And I think there was a bit of a conversation at certain points throughout this season so far that actually we've not quite been as strong in that. And we've still had a few more gaps. And there's probably maybe been a couple more individual errors that have slipped in over time. But again, a lot of that's probably just a confidence thing rather than it being kind of an overall statistical issue and a tactical problem. And I think, everything that you've just said there kind of points to that. It points to the fact that overall, especially in terms of that defensive solidity, we're not really that much weaker than what we have been previously. Different in different areas, of course, because things change year on year, personnel change, slight tactical tweaks, of course, affect the way that those stats are then presented. But overall, defensively, we have still been quite strong. And then obviously it's just about building on that throughout the thirds as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what goes to say in regards to our style, and we'll touch on construction later, is that isn't just the back 3/5 plus goalkeeper, that it really is a team effort. I think our structure, particularly the one that stands out here, is interceptions, 2nd in the league for interceptions. That just goes to show that the tactical system that we've got in place is strong. We obviously, football is not played by a tactical system, it's played by individuals trying to fit into a tactical system with then adding their own ability on top of that. But I think it goes to show from a structural perspective that we're set up well to win the ball back. And that can only be a positive. I think what we do with it is then maybe where we'd like to improve a little bit. But I think in regards to stopping the ball going in the back of the net and also winning the ball back, we're performing really, really well, really above average. And again, bearing in mind that everything that Jez mentioned, and Liam, of course, did earlier in the window in his interview with BBC Radio Lincolnshire about the financial situation in League One and how we really are fighting above ourselves here, really, or punching upwards. I think that's commendable. So now attacking then. XG 16th, so kind of lower mid-table for that. Now this is, in terms of actual goals, I think this is quite an important factor here, because this does, I think, show a little bit of a picture. So we've scored the most goals on set pieces in League One. That's great. Obviously, they're a huge part of the game, and only a fool would not see that as a positive, and would kind of almost pretend that doesn't matter and not focus on it. Set pieces are huge, particularly the lower down you go in the pyramid. But only 4 teams have actually scored fewer goals than us from open play. So that, for me, is probably, that's the part of the pitch, that's the part of our gameplay that I think we ideally would like to improve upon. In terms of chances created, we're not bad. We're not good. We're not bad. Touches in the box is really good, though. So we're 7th in the league for touches in the box. And then we're kind of lower mid-table for pretty much everything else in regard to chances created, conversion, and all that sort of stuff. So what that shows to me is something that it won't be a surprise to anyone. This is hardly a hot take. But what it says to me is that it's that last action. It's keeping the ball at the top end of the pitch for longer. And it's that not even getting the ball to the box. It's just that last action when it's in the box, that one last pass, or that finish, of course. Now we brought in James Collins, who has scored 2 goals now, of course, albeit one not directly from penalty, but kind of from a penalty on Saturday. So hopefully that can be something that can really add to that. But there's no denying that our offensive threat is reliant on set pieces at the moment. And if we can find ways of scoring more goals from open play, that would be, well, preferable, ultimately.
Well, of course. I mean, to be fair, that goal on Saturday will go down as an open play goal, won't it? So, maybe that was done on purpose just to try and boost those stats up a little bit. Now, you're talking about that, especially with the attacking metrics. I think it's really interesting because I remember having a conversation on one of the previews that I did last year before, whatever it was, to a Derby fan. And we were talking at the time about the way that Derby were being set up and the fact that it seemed as though from the outside looking in, and again, watching the highlights predominantly, not really watching full 90-minute games, that they were winning games from individual brilliance rather than winning games from being tactically set up strongly. Now, with us, with the situation that we've kind of been in terms of goal scoring, and it's been under a big spotlight, of course, over the last few months, do you think it is a personnel issue, or have we maybe not been set up as right as we should be in that attacking third to be able to not just create but sustain and then score all of the chances that we should be having based on what some of the numbers are suggesting?
Great question. I think there's lots of different elements to that. So I'll try and be concise with all these other things I've got written down and answer your question with these. I think it's linked. So I mentioned PPDA, but that shows kind of how well we press. But I think it's also worth bearing in mind how teams press against us. So some teams prefer to sit off opposition because they feel that that's the best way of beating them. Some teams prefer to press opposition. And not only are we good at pressing and intense ourselves, actually the average PPDA against us is actually very similar to ours. So what that means is teams press us really well, probably because they feel that we maybe don't have the technical ability to play through the thirds as much as other teams do, and think that they can force mistakes, force turnovers, etc. I think part of it is by design for us, but also we don't want to do it all the time. And what that creates is really transitional games. So games where possession is lost quite a lot. So in terms of what could we improve upon, I don't think it's necessarily playing through the thirds. I don't think we're going to be able to attract the players that do that. And I think we'll lose a lot of our defensive solidity if we try and play like that. But for me, is when the ball does get to that top end of the pitch, and I don't mind us going direct because we're really good at winning the second balls. It's keeping it there for longer because our passing metrics are pretty poor in terms of just overall passing accuracy and our total passes attempted. And our individual players particularly our centre forwards, are really low for passing accuracy percentage. So they have lots of other benefits. I think all of them perform pretty well for winning the ball back. A lot of them perform reasonably well for touching in the box. Particularly Jovan actually performs really well for that. But what none of them perform well out is, compared to other centre forwards in the league, is accurate passes. And so what that says to me is partly it's individual. That can we get the players to actually be able to be better at retaining possession in that final third, keeping hold of the ball when it does go up there, because we have to be quite transitional in how we play. We aim to win the ball back high up the pitch. We have to play like that. We can't play through the thirds as always. We're good when we have the ball at our feet, but we only do it when we can. I don't think we ever force it. And we've seen in this league, Peterborough, a prime example, when you force it, you get punished. We're great at punishing teams for that. So I think Part of it is because of how teams play against us, because they probably have seen that one weakness we do have is our short passing ability. We haven't got the most technically gifted squad in the league. We have lots of other benefits, but we haven't got a technically gifted squad particularly. So I think part of it is recruitment in regard to just the makeup of the squad that gives us the best possible opportunity to be successful. Part of it is how teams play against us, forcing that. So I think part of it will be, can the players at the top end of the pitch improve? Part of it will be maybe some small tactical tweaks in regards to how do we get there and stay there. I think we're very, very good at that on the left-hand side of the pitch, by the way. I think Tom Bayliss particularly, Sean Rowan and whoever's playing left centre forward, that little triangle combines really well for sustained possession. Not quite the same on the right-hand side. So I think part of it can be tactical, part of it can be individual, but I don't think we'll actually see a huge amount of change in that regard. I just hope to see us get better at that little bit of the pitch. I don't expect us to see too much change in regard to how we get there. I expect us to go direct relatively often when the short pass isn't that safe. But I just hope when the ball does go forward, we can keep it there just for a little bit longer. And if we can do that, then actually we've probably got all the tools we need to be successful. That's the missing piece of the jigsaw for me. I don't know the answer. And luckily, I don't get paid to find the answer in terms of on the coaching, on the training grid pitch. But that's probably just the one weakness really is our short passing. Everything else is pretty good on the whole overall.
Well, let's see how that can improve over the final few months of the season. Now, one last question then, before we get told off for overrunning on the stat talk. Total other end of the pitch this time, goalkeepers. Over the last few seasons, we've been obviously absolutely blessed. Alex Palmer has now officially made his move up to Ipswich in the Premier League as well. So, obviously the quality that we've had, even with Lucas Jensen last season. This year is probably one of the first years that we might actually have a fight for a number one spot between George Wickens and Zach George. How do you see that going over the next few months? And is there genuinely a fight on? And statistically, who's better, albeit from a small sample size from George?
Yeah, firstly, just personal opinion is I do expect to see a bit of a battle. Yeah, I don't think we've got a guaranteed number one. And I think that is credit to Zach, who has performed pretty well since he's had his opportunity in the team. Let's not forget he went out on loan to Southend United in the National League to play games and sadly didn't. Now, I think it's interesting, like looking back, in that he was competing with a youth product from Southend's own academy, who's in his early 20s now. He's not a teenager, but that's someone who you think, well, they'll probably want to get game time to as well. So that makes a little bit of sense. But on the surface, for someone who couldn't get a game in the National League to come and perform pretty admirably in League One, to the extent that it doesn't feel like we've got a reserve goalkeeper currently playing, I think is commendable for Zach. And I think the fact that George is clearly fit enough to feature in a squad again. Of course, he was on the bench on Saturday, yet Zach, and in my opinion, justifiably kept his position. That shows to me that they've got a fight on their hands, and that can only be a positive. It's been really difficult to say who I prefer because I think they've both got their qualities. They're both young goalkeepers with potential. But personally, right now, I don't think Zach has done anything to deserve to miss out. I think Zach should keep his place in the team now. Absolutely. In terms of how they compare, like you say, very small sample size with Zach. So they're probably difficult to read into. I think in terms of pros and cons, though, you can look into George's performances compared to other League One goalkeepers. And he's got some real standouts, and he's got some areas for development and standouts. He's had the most high claims out of any goalkeeper in League One. So I know sometimes he might have looked not most convincing at times, particularly I think 2 shaky games actually maybe sticks in your mind as a goalkeeper, doesn't it? But actually, compared to his peers in League One, he's really dominant in that part of the pitch, which is great. Hasn't made a single error that directly led to a goal. However, and that's obviously really positive. That puts him in the top 3% in the league. But his save percentage is only 64%, which is only in the 41st percentile. So that means 60% of League One goalkeepers save a higher percentage of shots than George Wickens. I will counter that, though, in saying that we don't tend to concede a high volume of shots, but the shots that we do concede tend to be in good areas of the pitch. So the overall kind of quality of shot or position of shot that George is conceding goals from is a quite high probability. But overall this season, in terms of the numbers, it's expected that he would have saved three goals that he hasn't done. But what I would say is before he got his injury, he'd actually clawed that back from 5 down to 3 by some really positive performances. So he was improving on his weakness. And in terms of passing accuracy, they're both similar. George is slightly better. I think we can all see that with our eyes. I think it's particularly a show from Zach that, if you're getting a goalkeeper to take a free kick nearly on the halfway line, that shows you trust their ability with dead balls. And I think that's quite rare in League One to see a goalkeeper with that dead ball ability that Zach has. It's something I really like. I don't think George is particularly weak in that position. I think he's a step up on Lucas Jensen in that particular part of his game. But I think that's a real asset of Zach that separates him from George. Haven't seen enough from Zach in terms of high claim shot percentage yet to really gauge that. So, but I think the important fact is there's not a standout between the two of them. They're both viable, I think, and that can only be a positive. 2 young goalkeepers that have got potential to kick on at this level.
Absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see how that does go about for the next few months. I'll be honest, I've really liked Zach George, and I'm really glad that he got to keep his position at the weekend, even though George Wickens was fit enough to be in the squad at the bare minimum. And honestly, I'm an advocate for you don't drop a keeper if they're performing at the same level. And I think he has shown so far that he's performing at the same level as what George Wickens was doing, even if there are obviously certain areas that one excels in than the other.
I've got 1 minute to go. I've realised we're meant to be finishing this little section at 22. So I've got...
No, you haven't. You done. It's 22:40 on my clock. I said 5
dear.
Past.
I joked about that. Earlier. I just said, if he overruns, you can cut him off. I never once thought you would actually do it.
Oh, in the group.
And yet, the message in the WhatsApp, we cannot repeat the message that's just come into the WhatsApp. Yeah, okay.
No, that's that. We've got an update though, haven't we, Ben?
Yeah, we've got
former Lincoln player.
Yep, former Lincoln player. Which one are you thinking?
Josh Griffiths.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. After Alex Palmer has been sold to Ipswich, West Brom have recalled Josh Griffiths from Bristol Rovers. That's been an interesting one for Bristol Rovers, although they have just taken another keeper in on loan, and I'm just trying to find who that is off the top of my feed. Miles Roberts. Miles Roberts is signed for Bristol Rovers from Watford until the end of the season on loan. Other transfers that have come in our division, we have Liam Fraser has gone from unattached is the new phrase that we're using, to Crawley. We have Ramani Edmonds Green from Charlton to Leyton Orient on an undisclosed fee. We've got Sam Cosgrove going from Barnsley to Stockport on loan. And we also have Tom McIntyre going from Portsmouth to Charlton. And then probably my favourite one of the night, just because I can say something from Phoenix Knights. Ben Perry has gone from Nottingham Forest to Northampton. He's a berry. He's Berry the Berry, Jerry. Ben Perry.
Ben Perry.
Yeah,
Very
there
good.
we go.
I have it on relatively good authority that we are not expecting anything at all in terms of exits. So at 20-11, we have got to a point where we're probably not expecting any exits at all. Now, the numbers have predictably tumbled as people realise that that's the case, and we are now just padding for 20 minutes. Should we bring Chris back in for a minute and let him say what he was going to say? Because he looks absolutely fuming in the green room.
Oh, padding now, are we? We had to be so tight on our timings that we've now got to pad for 20 minutes.
No, you're right. Let's
I was going to share something that I thought was quite interesting, but of course, I appreciate I might be in a small minority here. I was going to very quickly share some individual statistics of how some of our players feature compared to their League One peers. Things that you might not expect. So Ethan Arahan has had the most interceptions out of any midfielder in League One. I'm sure that's not a surprise. He's been fouled 44 times, which probably isn't too much of a surprise. That's a couple of times a game. Ethan Arahan's only committed 10 fouls all season. See? It is interesting. Cordy O'Connor has had the most touches in the opposition box out of any centre-back in League One. Sean Rowan has got the highest expected assists, the highest number of successful crosses, and the highest number of chances created, and the highest number of accurate long balls out of any defender in League One. It's pretty good, isn't it? Particularly as we all thought he didn't have a great game at the weekend because he misplaced a couple of crosses. Goes to show, compared to everyone else in League One in this position, he is actually quite literally the best at that. Tendai Darikwa performs really, really, really well for everything. Really, it's incredible how well he's performing. I think we know he's got particular things that he's good at, but he is outstanding at that. And last, but of course, not least, our centre forwards. Unsurprisingly, Ben House is in the top 10% of players in League One up front for winning the ball back. He has committed the most fouls out of any centre forwards in the league. But interesting, Jovan Makama is a close second for both of those metrics.
You see, that would have taken you well over the time that I allotted you anyway.
Well, you said you're padding now anyway.
What's really, I don't know if it's just me or not, but Chris's internet doesn't look good and he keeps speaking without moving his lips. Is that happening for anybody else?
I think he's so angry that it's radiating off and it's affecting the Wi-Fi. That's what it is.
You can still hear me okay, though, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's I think obviously, we're 15 minutes away from deadline day. I think it is going to be the quietest Lincoln City deadline day for a while. And as you said earlier, Gaz, it seems to be a pretty quiet one overall. I mean, I'm just looking through here. Even in the Premier League, we've had 6 signings today. One of those obviously being Alex Palmer. But the rest of them, there's no massive big money deals coming in. And as you've alluded to, Chris, if those deals aren't necessarily going from Championship to Premier League, they're not going to be going down from League One to League, to the Championship, and League Two to League One. Just seems a bit stilted today.
Yeah, I'm just looking through a few of them now, and there is, obviously there are plenty of deals going through, but they're not eye-catching ones particularly, are there? It doesn't seem. But then a lot. If clubs in League One have been throwing money at the situation, which they have, you would imagine that those clubs are not waiting until deadline day.
No.
So your Joe Taylors and players like that who are moving have obviously moved much earlier.
It's not. I don't think we have the level of insanity that we saw with Sunderland and Will Grigg. Where I don't know if you guys watched the Netflix series about it, but you could see the panic setting in the chief exec's faces because they'd never been in that position before. They'd never owned a football club before, and they're there going, "What do we do? How do what? This is all foreign to me. What do we do?" And they said, "Oh, if we need a player, then you've got to sign him." And then, sure enough, it was, They ended up spending however much it was on him, but I don't think we have that level of insanity now. It's people have the money, so they're willing to spend it early. And as Steve says, we got our business done early again. So absolutely.
So we're going to lose Chris for a minute because he's going to go and try and do something with his tie, apparently. It's been a really slow. It's not been a bad show. We've had a few people. JRS Special, who is a real friend of ours on social media. Great show, lads. We all had a laugh, and welcome to all our new signings who put pen to paper today. Welcome and good luck on your imminent loan move due shortly. It's always good to have you on board, whether you mean your kind words or not. Sean Simon says, evening, guys. He's probably just finishing work. Andy Brown says, great show tonight. Very good from Jez. Careful with the Jez propaganda. Kaz Nicholson, good show tonight. Hopefully now Rico Ring Ring, Rico and Bayliss can offer us a creativity. Hopefully this second half of the season we can tick over in the top half of the table. Ian Tinkler says, great show, guys. Thank you very much. So yeah, plenty of kind words. With 13 minutes, so it actually feels like we should just wrap it up early. Personally, to me, there isn't anything doing, is it? It just feels like we're going to pad for 13 minutes. There's no Lincoln City business actually required. Walter here says, it's interesting to see Rhodes go to Mansfield on loan. We mentioned that earlier in the show. Jordan Rhodes going to Mansfield really surprised me because he's not had the best of seasons at Blackpool with injuries, but he was massive when he signed for them last season. He really helped push them towards the playoffs. So I think that he's really interesting. Simon Wilcox says, player power about to burst. If Jez said the wages are 10 grand plus in League One, imagine what they want for a squad player in the Prem and Championship. And I think it probably does kind of, this transfer window does perhaps play into that a little bit, that there are some big spenders. League One is the division where the money's being spent. Like, there are controls in the Championship. There are controls in the Premier League and not so much in League One, and that's what we've got to try and battle with. So let's bring...
I think as well, like when you have that lack of control, if all of a sudden people can spend that amount of money with the tantalizing proposition, I guess, of being able to get into the Championship, it's just going to be chaos for a while. I can't see anything changing for the good unless we get this regulator in, which, as Jess said, we'll probably be dead by the time it happens.
Well, my dad says, I've enjoyed that, lads. Well done. Literally, that's probably the nicest thing he's ever said about the podcast. Normally, he says, what the fuck would I want to listen to you lot talk about football for? I listened to one and all you did was talk about fucking food for the first 10 minutes. Yeah, is what he said. Rachel says, turn the TV off. If you're not watching it, you're running up the electricity bill.
No.
Jack Waby wonders if it's McIntyre from Portsmouth we were interested in, a left-footed defender. It certainly could be. All the dads are on board now. Look at that. Evening, guys. Great show. Could be watching Corrie after all. That's Charlie's dad. Any message for Mr. Beast and Charlie?
I'm just proud of them that they finally figured out how to comment. They've been watching this for months and never actually figured it out. So seriously, I get a message at the end of each podcast saying, I've watched, can you actually show me how to bloody comment? And they've never figured it out. So well done.
What I do find amusing as well is, because obviously Dad's commented and that was brilliant, but there was a time in lockdown where we did a family Cards Against Humanity online game or something like that, and Dad's entire video feed was sideways for the whole show. And the thing is, every time he turned his phone to make it went sideways again, and he was just losing his temper. So and Big Tone says he's watching on the app. So there we go. Brilliant stuff. Chris wants to come back in. I can see him gesticulating because he's gone through a few ties tonight. And now he's put them all on. He looks like he's wearing like a Christmas bib.
Like it. I might go like this next time we have a night out.
Is that literally all the ties that you own?
No, I think there was two I didn't get through. Didn't get through these two.
Wrap them around your head.
Wow. It does feel like that time of night, doesn't it? With 9 minutes to go till the window shuts, it feels like we should all have our ties round our head, and we should be dancing to "Come On Eileen" like at the end.
Kids
of
at a wedding, knee sliding across the floor.
There we go.
That absolute bitch. Sorry, Rach. I've just realised, because my TV's controlled by the TV box I've got. Rach has just turned it off from upstairs. I give it about 5 minutes before she turns the bloody lights off as well.
Oh, dearie me. Lewis Edison says that the best part of deadline day, which is that, Lewis? Chris's ties, the talk of XG. It could be anything. It could literally be anything. So do you realise we've done 3 deadline days now? And I think the entire time we've done them, we've only actually had 1 transfer.
Conor McGrand. Last one. Is that it? Wow.
So if we don't do
the
one,
last time,
go on.
When was the last time we had a deadline day where we didn't have a single incoming or outgoing?
Did we in the summer one?
Yeah, because we had Saxon early, and then we had J Ben left on the stroke of 11.
Okay, yeah. I can't really remember.
No, it was a long time. It's got to be a long time.
Oh God. It's been a long day. It's been a long couple of weeks. It really has. I'm absolutely knackered. I am, and I haven't got anything done on the real EFL. Lisa Dainty's got a question. Chris can answer this because it'll take us 7 minutes. Can we discuss formations? 3 back, 4 back. We seem so lopsided. Jeffrey's over Hackett. We need to get Ring in the 11.
I think it's a really good question. How long do you want me to answer this for?
Just do a couple of minutes. Get us towards
Okay. So part of this is a personal opinion as well, but personally, I like us with a back 3. I think from a defensive perspective, probably one of the reasons why we are so good at not conceding too many high quality chances is because we have 3 centre backs defending our own goal. When you only play back 4, you only have 2 centre backs doing that. So I think that helps. Personally, I think we are a better team when we have 2 up top. So if you want to have 2 up top and you want to have 3 at the back, the only way of doing that is 3-5-2. I think we've found really good balance with that on the left-hand side in terms of like combinations. I think we see quite a lot of whoever's playing left central midfield has been Bayliss recently. Previous to that has been Moylan. We've seen the left wing back, whether that be Hackett or most recently Jeffries, and who is playing up front. I think we've seen, and then Rowan joining that little quartet as well. I think we've seen quite nice combinations there. I think it worked us really well. I haven't seen quite the same on the right-hand side. I don't think we have quite the same setup on that right-hand side. Maybe that's by design. Maybe it's due to personnel. Who knows? But I think it's a good question about Ring because Tendai is performing so incredibly well at right wing back. He's going to start there. At left wing back, we've got Jeffries and Hackett. You can't see Ring getting ahead of either of those. They're both good in that position. Jeffries probably slightly better defensively than Rico, but Rico really direct with his running. I think they've both got pros and cons there. So I think it's in our current system, it's probably difficult to get Ring into the starting 11, but I like what he brings, particularly on the break. He makes sense if we're chasing the game to play a really, really advanced wing backs, almost like wingers. But yeah, I agree. It's difficult to get him in the team from the start. And that is a question for Michael at the moment. I don't know the answer to that. But I think we look a better team and a more solid team in both boxes when we play a back 3. I don't think we look as pretty on the ball like that, but I think we're more effective. Awesome.
Brilliant. It was 2 minutes.
You're welcome.
It's crazy, isn't it? I was just, I'm just even looking at the ticker and there's hardly anything going through, but then you'll know we'll get up in the morning and there'll be 5 or 6 deals having gone through. So
Cambridge just signed Cambridge just signed. Oh no, that I said just that. It's because it showed up on Sky Sports News as breaking news, but that was 7 hours ago. They've signed Nathan Bishop from.
He's turned the TV back on.
I have turned the TV back on.
You hear this, Rach?
She won't turn it off again. She does. Yeah.
What about this? Feels like we're missing a star player, like a George Grant type.
We've mentioned earlier when Charlie and I briefly did our little season review, is probably the weakest part of our pitch is short passing and creative passing on the deck. I think we're good at crosses, we're good at set pieces, we're good at actually decent on the counter attack as well. But it's just creating something from nothing. Probably with a pass. I think we've got players in the team that can do it by carrying the ball. Jack Mullen has definitely been that. Hopefully, it sounds like Gardner has been brought in to kind of replicate that. What we do miss, I think, is someone with a real kind of penetrative passing range. But also, they're very expensive players, generally speaking. And also, at this level, they tend to have defensive weaknesses. Not all of them, of course, but at this level, no one's perfect. No player has very few weaknesses. If they didn't, they'd be in the Premier League. So, yeah, I agree. That's probably the individual profile of player that we're probably missing. Question is, who you're taking out a team to put that player in. I think you lose a lot defensively then, and we might concede more goals than we are at the moment. And number 2, who could we afford that fits that profile? It's difficult, isn't it?
So I think we've got a good question here that will take us through to the end. It's from John Booth. He says, is keeping Ethan Arahan our best bit of business of the window? So let's go around each. We'll start with Ben and we'll go around clockwise because then that finishes on me. So Ben, what's our best bit of the window? Is it Keith business? Is it Keith in? Oh, fuck's sake.
Keeping
what's
Ethan
our best bit of business of the window? Is it keeping Ethan Arahan?
I think so. I think how long has he got left on his contract at this point? Is it still 2.5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've still got him tied down.
It's 1.5 plus 1.
Yeah. So there's that option, isn't there? I think the fact that we've still got him on a decent length of contract, we're in no rush to sell him. And I think, the fact that Jez was quick to praise the board, it sounds like Ethan was one of the players that would have had a bid for him today. I think he said there were serious bids for serious players. To me, that suggests Ethan O'Rahan, Pordy O'Connor, and another, I think he said 3.
He said 2, I think. 3 over the course of the window, but 2
Okay,
today.
yeah, so 2 today. So to me, that suggests Pordy and Ethan today. It's a good bit of news if they just turn around and say, no, we're holding firm on what our valuation is. Obviously, we're aware that if that valuation is met, it's in the contract and it will, pretty much have to be accepted. But until that valuation is met, I'm pretty comfortable with that. And the fact that they've not just, twitched at it and gone, yeah, right, get rid of him, go, and take the money. Like, they've done a really good thing there. So to me, that is the best bit of business of the window.
Charlie?
I don't think it is. For the record, that's not me saying that I would have wanted Ethan O'Rahan to go, not at all. But first of all, if there was no bids for him, then it doesn't really mean much anyway. I think at some point we've got to think about the longevity of the football club's position in League One and wanting to go higher. Ethan O'Rahan could and should be a huge part of that. But as we've already discussed, okay, yes, 2.5 years left on the deal. At some point, there will be that number that is hit. And I don't really think it's about us being able to keep hold of him. It's more about just another club simply not matching that. We're not going to lower it. Exactly what Ben was saying. For me, though, the best bit of business was actually just bringing in James Collins. And it sounds a little bit cliche, but a proper goal scoring number 9, somebody that the younger lads can look up to. And also, it kind of just calmed down a little bit of the sort of the fan base going at the club for saying, look, well, we need this striker, we need a striker. And it's the thing that's always hounded at the club year on year. But when Tyler Walker came in 18 months ago, granted, it hasn't worked out the way that we wanted at the time. But when he came in then, that whole transfer window, there wasn't this overall talk of we need a striker. And I actually think James Collins coming in this window also had that exact same effect. So for me, it was James Collins.
Chris?
And with that, the window has slammed shut.
No, it eased shut gently on those self-closing hinges. Chris?
Yeah, I think it is. I think I agree with Ben, and I can't remember who was asked the question now, but whoever it was asked the question, I agree with you. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's 2 reasons. Number one, I like the ambition that the club has shown in terms of holding firm with valuations that, by the way, are agreed with the players. I think with Ethan, it was agreed upon his signing what would accept for him to leave. I like the fact that we're still wanting to have a good go this season, and keeping hold of Pordy O'Connor seems to be a big part of that. We probably haven't really got much of a chance without Pordy in the team. But deep down, in all honesty, I think that's a long shot. I like that we're going to give it a go, and they want to do everything they can to push it. But I think realistically speaking, I'm certainly not. I expect most of us are probably not realistically expecting a playoff push. And we know the financial issues that we're working in, and the challenges that the club find themselves in terms of the ecosystem in League One. But football is played on a football pitch, and we've got good footballers in the team. Ethan O'Rahan is the best footballer I've ever seen at Lincoln City, genuinely. And because he's on a long deal, and assuming we're not going to be in a playoff push this season, I think it's going to be a hell of a lot more difficult to have one next season without Ethan O'Rahan in the squad. So I think keeping hold of him now is a brilliant piece of business, not just for this season, but just for the long term.
Very good. And I am actually going to agree with Charlie. I think the best bit of business is bringing James Collins in. And I think we've seen that even just in the last couple of games, the XG, which here I am now talking about it. But the XG in the Wigan game was almost all the good XG was James Collins. He just picks up the right positions. He's got 2 goals in 3 games. he'll score more. I think he finishes this season closer to 10 goals than he does 5 goals. So, and whether that is enough to put us in the top 6 or not, I don't know. It's a long shot, but I think this league is actually pretty much of a muchness. I think there's a lot of teams in the middle of the pack that have gone well that will start falling away. There's those that have been put. If you've got a goal scorer, you can take advantage of that. It was the same with Joe Taylor last season. James Collins has got going quicker than Joe Taylor did. So I'm not saying that he's going to have the same sort of impact, but he's hit the ground running really quickly. 2 games as a sub, 1 as a start, 2 goals. I think it's huge. And the fact we've got him next season as well. So there we go. That was our transfer deadline day special. There is no more news for the what?
Well, there's transfer news. Some that
I'm not
isn't
interested in it now. Is it Lincoln transfer news?
No, but it's League
Nobody's
One.
staying up past 11 o'clock to know that Burton have signed a player on loan from Barnsley or whatever, are they? Not really. Do you know who the player is, Ben? Read his name out. Tell me about him.
Owen Moxon's gone to Stockport from Portsmouth.
So?
All right, sod you then.
I don't care. It's not 11 o'clock. So thank you to everybody for watching. 110 people still here, even though I don't want to be, which is phenomenal. So thank you for that. Thank you to Ben and Chris and Charlie for all of their input. Thank you to Jez. Thank you to the club. Thank you to everybody that gave us hate on Twitter. It just makes me want to do more of what we do. So thank you very much for watching. We will be clipping this up as a shorter podcast. I won't be. I'm hoping Ben might if he gets the time.
Yeah, maybe not tonight.
Yeah.
Probably
maybe not tonight. I'm actually going to go and play some Sniper Elite Resistance for half an hour because I won't be able to sleep.
That's on Game Pass, isn't it? That's on Game Pass on the Xbox. I might give that a go.
Yeah, there we go. But all that remains to be said is thank you very much for watching and up the imps.
Up the imps.
Up the imps.
Up the imps.